Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second and final part of what if Naruto was born in DXD universe as a devil and have a harem. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
With a rough voice, the man called out to the black-haired girl, Calawarner, "Take a contingent of priests and take care of the blonde intruder. I should be able to handle these other intruders with Middle's help." Before floating off toward the church to fetch the priests, the woman rolled her lone visible eye and said, "Whatever you say, Donaseek." She then appeared to vanish into a dusting of black feathers. A young blonde girl wearing a gothic lowly outfit said, "So we finally get to kill some devils, Donaseek," and her smile betrayed how excited she was to spill devil blood all over the floor. The group's male fallen angel, Donaseek, grunted in frustration. "Yes, Middled." He seemed to moan at the young girl's excessive enthusiasm. Although he was a particularly ruthless fallen angel, he reminded himself that his partner, for the time being, was like a cat with a new toy to play with. In the brief time he'd known her, she'd nearly killed herself taunting stray devils as she played her little game with them. "Let's go greet our new guests, shall we?" The two took off in a gust of wind to catch the red-haired devil and her two companions. Alongside Calawarner, after gathering the priests and arming them with their holy swords, they marched in the direction of the blonde-haired devil and his four companions in less than 30 seconds. The entire group activated their weapons, and Calawarner summoned a spear of light to her hand. "Halt," she yelled authoritatively. "Devils, you are treading on sacred ground. You will be punished according to God's will in his name. Don't preach such false testimony toward my companions and me, fallen angel," Naruto said, yawning slightly before turning to face the contingent with half-lidded eyes that seemed to grow more intense as his blue eyes glowed in the starlight. "Both you and I are aware that you and your friends have invaded the lands of the Gremory and Uzumaki clans. The murder of a family of innocents, the attempted kidnapping of an innocent under the protection of the Gremory clan, the attempted murder of a devil under the banner of the Gremory clan, the attempted murder of two humans under the protection of the Uzumaki and Gremory clans, and trespassing on devil territory are among your crimes. By my name, Naruto Uzumaki, you will voluntarily turn yourself in and be punished according to the law for the crimes you committed. Do you really think you and your peerage can defeat us?" Calawarner and her priests chuckled at the young devil king's foolishness. "Clearly, you are outnumbered," Naruto firmly declared. "Quantity means nothing if their quality doesn't compare to the quality of my bishop, rook, and knights, fallen angel," sending a shiver down the spines of Karen, Murayama, and Katase. "I shall tell you only once more," Naruto said. "Give up or perish." The priests rushed forward without hesitation, preparing their blades to slay the devils in front of them. Naruto shook his head. Karen and Kuno, the two nodded, and Karen's hands blazed with black lightning as Kuno used her most potent foxfire to summon a wall of powerful magic at the priests. Of the 35, nearly 15 were screaming in pain as black lightning swept over their bodies, while the others were wailing as the turquoise fires Kuno summoned started to burn at their clothing, diverting their attention as the little fox girls started to dart among them, kicking and punching the priests with great force as they screamed. Naruto said, "Watch closely, Katase, Murayama. Kuno, being a nine-tailed fox yokai, has incredible magic potential by nature, while rooks don't usually have powerful magic. She is an exceptionally gifted fighter because of this, her inherent speed and size, and her rook-enhanced strength and defense. She can use her fox fires to divert an opponent, then use melee combat to destroy them. Because of her exceptionally balanced personality, Kuno would have been my second choice for queen if Hinata hadn't been. Despite her low-class status, Karen's succubus and vampire ancestry give her a magical ability comparable to that of a middle-class bishop, making her the ideal bishop because of her unusual ancestry and sadomasochism. She is regarded by her adversaries as one of the most vicious and merciless mages in the underworld. She will never leave an enemy alive unless she desires it or I tell her to do so. One day, you two will have the same level of skill when working with one another or with another member of the peerage." The two watched in amazement as the two girls, who appeared to be very different from one another, fought incredibly well together. The fallen angel launched her prepared spear of light at Naruto because he was preoccupied with explaining, but the two knights saw it coming and knew the spear would just cut through their shinai like a hot knife through butter. "Do you need power?" a mysterious voice called out to them. "Power to save the man you proudly serve?" Time seemed to stop around the two girls as they nodded and found themselves alone in a pitch-black room. "Then what would you do with this power? What would you do if I gave you the ability to save your king?" "I would use that power to protect my king and keep his friends safe," Murayama said. "I would cut down the enemies of my king to ensure his survival and safety," replied Katase. "Very well, The voice said in a neutral tone, "Grasp the hilt of the sword that lies before you and keep your king safe from harm." Murayama. The room fell silent once more, and several moments seemed to pass as the girls braced themselves for the worst. Hold fast to the sword's hilt in front of you, Katase, and defeat your king's adversaries. Go now and save the man you both adore. As if time had begun anew, the two clutched the hilts and felt a surge of power run through their bodies before the spear of light could reach Naruto. Murayama rushed forward and slashed her newly acquired blade, shocking the groups when it appeared to reflect the spear back at Calawarner, shocking her so much that the spear pierced her shoulder. The battle, however, seemed to last an hour, even though it had only been 15 minutes. Katase, on the other hand, felt a dark aura overtake her as she drew the blade and charged Calawarner before delivering a clean slash through her body, spilling her blood all over the ground and causing her body to fall in two symmetrical pieces. Karen appeared almost orgasmic as the priest's screams only seemed to make her want more. Unfortunately, with the screams of pain gone, Karen returned to her favorite source of pleasure and mild torture in the form of teasing. Her king, Naruto Kuno, appeared slightly battered, but there were no visible wounds, and her red and white Miko robes were not stained with blood. However, it must have taken a toll on their bodies to experience such a boost in power and strength, along with seemingly summoning those two blades out of nowhere. Naruto was shocked to see the two knights wielding swords that looked remarkably similar to one another but clearly held different feels. Katase's blade was obviously dark and menacing, while Murayama's was peaceful and calming. The two knights resheathed their weapons and nearly collapsed from exhaustion. But Naruto grinned, grateful that no one was seriously hurt. "Karen, do you have any idea how the other two groups are doing?" "Rias and her two groupies have already killed those other two fallen angels," Karen said, nodding and closing her eyes as she spread her energy throughout the room. "And Ino just shoved a spear of light. Well, it's probably best you don't know where Ino just shoved her spear of light." Karen, for once, winced as she saw a particularly painful blow land against the remaining fallen angel. Issei and Kiba are fighting what priests didn't leave to intercept us, while Sakura and Ino are putting the hurt on that fallen angel that killed Sakura. Sakura simply delivered a knockout punch in response. Karen sighed in frustration. "Issei will have to learn that it is better to kill an enemy so that they can't attack him once his back is turned. The fallen angel is currently out cold, and the other priests are either dead or incapacitated, but for the time being, he did a passable job of beating the priests who came his way. When we arrive, I'll make sure to complete them." Naruto nodded, but as the group waited for Hinata, Hanabi, and Asia to help them regain their energy, he turned pale upon learning that Ino had thrust a spear of light somewhere that caused Karen to flinch. A few minutes later, everyone was gathered in the center of the church, where Ino had bound Rainier with a rope of light that she had created from a spear of light. Fortunately, the spear that Ino had thrust into Rainier had vanished, but burn marks were still noticeable around her legs and inner thighs. With Karen completing the remaining priests Issei had to contend with, Ino and Sakura were now holding each other while they watched Rias tell Issei that he must kill Rainier. Issei said solemnly, "I can't kill her, Rias bucko." Rainier grinned at Issei's vulnerability, but that didn't last long because Rias used her power of destruction to kill the woman. Rias remarked with a hint of rage, "You will have to learn, Issei, that you will end up forced to kill an enemy rather than knock them out. What happens if you're on your own and because you force yourself to try to knock your opponent, who has no qualms about killing you, they end up killing you instead? You endanger not only your own life but also the lives of others due to your weakness." Naruto added, "Normally, I'm all for non-violent ways to resolve an argument, but these fallen angels and priests went out of their way to try and kill not just you, but Rias and the rest of us. If they were any stronger, you would be a smear of blood on the ground of this church. They would have killed us if we hadn't killed them. Devils like you die as early as you do, so you can't always just knock someone out and hope they don't come back to life while you're not looking." As he said this, an unaccounted-for priest rose and hurled his sword of light at Ino's back. In terror, Sakura poured all of her strength into her left arm and conjured a jet-black gauntlet, which conjured a shield of shadow that, when struck by the sword, absorbed the light effortlessly before hurling a spear at the priest, piercing its skull and swiftly killing him. Everyone watched in wonder as Sakura's fists were covered in two different colored gauntlets, one red with a green gem on the back of her hand, and the other black with a red gem on the back of her hand. Naruto glanced at Issei, blinked, and gestured toward the deceased priest. "Just like that, given how serious he was about killing you in God's name, that would not have occurred if you hadn't been afraid to kill him. Because you didn't want to be aware that you had killed a man, you put our lives in jeopardy. This also applies to not killing Rainier when you had the opportunity. She played with your emotions. She guided you. You have every right to be so angry with her that you would have killed her right away, just as readily as she would have killed you during your date with her that evening." Issei yelled angrily, "So are you saying I should just kill anyone I come across?" Obviously not. Naruto acknowledged that if he did that, he would be no better than strays, but what if Asia's life was in jeopardy? To protect Asia, would you kill someone? Would you compromise your morals? To save her life? Issei averted her gaze. You would. Of course. Naruto turned away and started to return to the church's entrance, saying, "Men like us will do whatever it takes to protect our loved ones from harm. Just as I wouldn't hesitate to tear apart heaven if they threatened my friends and loved ones. We would storm heaven's gates to protect them, even if it meant that we would eventually die." Before Naruto and his peerage vanished into the earth, a magic circle materialized beneath them. Before the red-haired king and her peerage vanished in another summoning circle, Rias and a few of the others blushed after hearing Naruto's impassioned speech. When the two groups gathered the following morning to celebrate the successful completion of a mission that could have been far more dangerous than it actually was, the chastised Issei was celebrating, but he didn't appear to be upset or to have displayed any signs of remembering the verbal smacking he had received from both Rias and Naruto. It didn't take long for Naruto and Rias to learn that Sakura's other sacred gear was called Night Reflection, which was quite strong and extremely rare, though not as rare as Issei's boosted gear, which evolved during the fight against the priests and Rainier. Normally, this gear appeared as a mass of shadows that took the form of whatever its user wished, but it's possible that her twice critical's gauntlet form had some sort of influence on the form and capabilities of this new gear. Rias and Naruto were certain that Murayama and Kataise had not received sacred gears when they were revived, but the sudden appearance of two swords where their shinai had previously been confused them. Naruto chose to let the girls name them because of the strange auras surrounding them. Murayama named her blade Yuarakaite, Tender Hands, because of its protective properties, while Kataise named her blade Juchi Yosamu, 10,000 Cold Nights, because of its aura and the way it made her feel when she used it. Unaware that a giant red bird was observing them from the trees, the groups grinned and acknowledged the newly formed swords, and Haku emerged in her French-made uniform with a tray full of tea and snacks as they celebrated. Even Asia was growing stronger when Akeno took over teaching her magic. While Rias did her best to assist Issei, the groups continued to train together on Sundays while attempting to finish the contracts after school, with the exception of Issei, who appeared to be finishing contracts at a record pace, even though he was getting much stronger. Issei had been given yet another contract at the school, but Rias had been called out to another contract, so he was unable to really help him. Asia offered to help, and fortunately, it was something Issei could do, because all he had to do was help a girl confess her feelings to a man she cared about and get her research notes from the university she was attending. Asia felt her heart quicken after seeing Issei give advice on what to write on the love letter, and he was able to put his arms around her waist when they returned to the clubhouse. Of course, Akeno made fun of the two for their growing intimacy, which made Asia blush, and Issei sputter some sort of explanation that he wasn't trying something perverted. After a week, the two groups were gathered in the occult research club by Rias and Naruto, who were grinning and trying not to laugh as Issei and the others tried to figure out why they were called together on a weekday if they weren't training. The group fell silent as Naruto called out, "Allow me to be the first to inform you that we both believe you're ready to receive your familiars now. Familiars are an important thing when it comes to being a devil. You can use the right familiar in a variety of ways, such as distributing contracts while you are out performing them or assisting you in combat." No one on Naruto's peerage had a familiar, including Kiba, who had a small bird dangling on his shoulders, Akeno, who had a miniature Oni, Kaneko, who was, predictably, a cat, and Rias, who was a bat. "I am aware of what the girls are going to ask me now," Naruto said. "The truth is I wanted to make sure you were strong enough to handle the stronger familiars before we went. Why haven't you allowed us to get our own familiars by now? Normally, only one peerage will be given the opportunity to become acquainted. You have a better chance of finding and binding a familiar to yourself if you are stronger. I've determined that you're prepared to acquire your familiar because I'm confident that all of you would be at the middle class level in terms of strength, teamwork, and the ability to successfully complete contracts quickly. But there's something you're forgetting, Mr. Uzumaki," a female voice called from behind them, and Naruto and the girls all turned to face Sauna Shitori, the president of the student council, with the other council members standing behind her. "We've also been waiting for the chance to obtain familiars for the members of my peerage as well." Her black hair gave her an air of nobility, and her bright violet eyes seemed to pierce his soul. Naruto said, "Sona-tan," but he was politely rewarded with a water ball aimed at his face. "Nei-chan," Haku firmly said, "why do you behave that way toward my master every time?" "Because he reminds me so much of Oni-sama," Suna exaggerated, moaning. "How you put up with their childish behavior simply astounds me, Haku Imoudo." Haku chuckled. Maybe it's because I find their behavior refreshing and a much welcome change from the formality you display. Do you see any family resemblance between Haku and Suna-san? Issei asked Kiba in a whisper. Even though their eye colors differ, I am aware that they are both biological sisters, Rias said, interrupting Kiba's negative shake of his head. Sona is the middle sister, and Haku is the youngest. Asia said, then who's the oldest sister? Rias responded, Seraphal Leviathan, one of the 4 great Satans and an extremely powerful devil in her own right. Unlike Sona, Seraphal and Haku acquired a special capacity to control both ice and water magic. But Sona can only work with water. Strangely, each of the 3 of them has a distinct personality. Haku is very obedient. Sona has a comparable level of dominance. In contrast, Seraphal-sama is extremely childish, though she can also become very serious when necessary. Growing up, she and Naruto-kun were friends for years. They even pulled practical jokes on 2 of the 3 great Satans, including my older brother, Sears X Lucifer. Rias laughed when she recalled how Naruto and Seraphal had pulled practical jokes on her brother and his best friend. You would have thought he would have learned to respect the 4 great Satans since he's always talked about becoming one. When he found out Sears X-sama was one of them, Sona said with a heavy sigh, seemingly rolling her eyes at Rias' actions. But instead he drags my delinquent sister and convinces her to help him prank the other Satans. His actions are inappropriate for a high-class devil of his clan's caliber. Naruto dodged a ball of water and it returned with a vengeance, striking the back of his head. Stop talking about me like I'm not here, Sona-tan, he said. I'm not some stuffy politician trying to stab other clans in the back just to raise my standing. Perhaps I just want to enjoy life and make the most of it. And you choose to do that by playing the fool, she scoffed. No, I do that by having fun and making people smile, he chastised, something you, obviously, find impossible to do. Which? Smile or have fun? Both. Even Karen believed she could see sparks flying between the 2 arguing devils at this point, as they were both staring into each other's eyes. How about a bet? Sona snarled up. What kind of bet did you have in mind? Naruto asked in a cold voice. A contest pitting your peerage against mine. Familiars for their peerage are awarded to the winner. What about the loser? You and your peerage will have to serve me for the rest of the month in the student council. You seem quite arrogant about your victory, don't you? What happens if you lose? My group spends the entire day watching anime and reading manga. You don't actually have any tasks to complete for us. Sona's violet eyes narrowed. All right, though her words were laced with disgust and bile, she declared, if you win, the girls of my peerage will strip for you and your peerage. Issei was blushing as he daydreamed about what Sona and her girls looked like naked, and Naruto's blue eyes narrowed as a tiny sparkle appeared from the corner of them. All right, he said at last, surprising everyone, I get to choose what kind of game we play since you chose the terms and conditions of the game. Do you agree? Agreed, but don't think for a minute you have any chance of winning, no matter what game you choose, Sona said, nodding, her purple eyes glimmering with her desire to triumph and keep Naruto from humiliating her. Sona was unaware that she had effectively lost the wager long before it was placed, and Rias just shook her head. Naruto was renowned for his nearly unbelievable luck. All right, Issei and Saji Genshiru both had severe nosebleeds after Naruto said, then the game is called strip poker. They then pleaded with him to teach them what he knew, referring to him as master. However, to make sure things are fair, Rias will be the dealer since she is a third party and won't take sides on the matter. There will be 8 people at the table, 4 people from your peerage and 4 from mine. We should start the game as kings. I'll only bring in 7 of my members because you have 7 in your peerage. We begin with 5,000 yen. A player can post clothing items with separate prices when their yen runs out. Each pair of shoes and socks costs 100 yen. Shirts and blouses cost 500 yen. The pants and skirts cost 1,000 yen each. Additionally, boxers, bras, and underwear cost 5,000 yen each. To prevent anyone from losing too soon, the maximum bet amount for the first 10 rounds is 1,000 yen. The maximum bet will increase by 1,000 yen every 10 rounds until the 50th round, at which point, if the game lasts that long, you can wager 5,000 yen. When someone loses all of their clothing and money, they have to stand up against the bookshelf so that they can be photographed without hiding. The game is over when one peerage has 8 pictures. Sona called out, and just because we don't trust Issei not to keep the pictures, he will not be in the building during the game, and because Issei was a huge pervert, she gave him a scornful look. Issei sobbed as he left the locked door after Naruto said, I think that is the first thing we've ever agreed with one another about. Now, the girls from my peerage joining the game will be Katase, Murayama, Hinata, Yugito, Karen, Sakura, and Ino. The bets were relatively light for the first 10 rounds, with Naruto, Hinata, Kataise, and Yugito for Naruto's peerage and Sona, Tsubaki Shinra, Genshiro Saji, and Tsubasa Yura for Sona's peerage. Unfortunately, Genshiro did his best to show Sona that he knew what he was doing, and before he had to begin stripping, he had nearly 10,000 yen in his bank out of kindness or even pity, as some of the girls might have said. Around 15, Tomo Meguri took his place at the table with 5,000 yen in her bank, and he now stood in his boxers against one of the empty bookshelves, the precious manhood covered in shame. By round 22, both Hinata and Tsubasa were naked and standing against the wall with naked pictures of themselves, though Tsubasa was doing her best to cover herself with her hands. By this point, Naruto had doubled his pot, despite the fact that it came from both his and Sona's peerage, and Sona now had nearly 13,000 yen in her bank account. 8 rounds later, Tsubaki and Momo were holding naked pictures of themselves as they stood next to Hinata, and the others naked. Rei Kusaka and Ruruko Nomura had replaced their 2 fallen comrades, and Naruto's peerage would win after 4 more eliminations, but that didn't last long because Yugito, Sakura, and Kataise were eliminated over the course of 12 rounds, and they were replaced by Murayama, Karen, and Ino. Now that each team's final 4 were seated at the table, Rias was shocked to see that Naruto and Sona had comparable-sized piles of yen, though this was primarily because Sona and Naruto were targeting the other members of their peerage rather than each other. Karen and Rei eliminated each other in a head-to-head match only to forget that Naruto had also kept his hand in. Naturally, after stripping, Karen floated over to Naruto and pressed herself against his back, claiming that this was her way of being his lucky charm. Naturally, Sona was horrified at what Naruto was merely permitting to occur rather than intervening. Despite Naruto rolling his eyes, she insisted, "Are you just going to let your servant hang off of you like that?" "Yes, when we first met I made a special effort to persuade her to stop, but eventually I just learned to ignore it." He shocked the Citri heiress once more by saying, "This is actually tame for her," believing that this was his way of calling himself a pervert. However, Rias knew that it didn't bother Naruto or the members of his peerage because he simply didn't judge based on physical appearance. By round 53, only Sona and Naruto were seated at the table, while the other girls were standing naked, either not caring that Naruto saw them or attempting to hide their modesty from the 2 boys present. Naturally, the naked elephant in the room wasn't Naruto's ignorance. Rather, it was Sakura and Ino engaging in a passionate makeout session while their hands roamed over each other's nude bodies. Genshiro didn't stay in the intense display of love and adoration for more than 5 seconds, and the 2 made sensual groans and moans. Sona smirked subtly as she glanced at her 2 cards, an ace of diamonds and a king of spades. "Your peerage is full of perverts," she said plainly, placing a wager of 7,000 yen. Naruto closed his eyes and glanced down at his hand. "I'll raise you 2,000 and bet 9,000 yen. With a nod, Sona increased her wager by 2,000 yen. With a nod, Rias turned the river over Queen of Hearts, Jack of Hearts, and 9 of Hearts. Since it appeared that Sona couldn't lose, her mind was already congratulating her on the victory. She would have an ace-high straight, which is essentially an unbeatable hand, with just a 10. Sona said, "I bet 21,000 yen, while shifting her chips. Naruto nodded and contributed his own 21,000 to the wager. A 7 of diamonds was revealed when Rias turned the next card. When Sona bit her lip to see if Naruto would respond, he remained expressionless. Naruto said, "How about we make this our final hand, Sona?" drawing the girl's attention. "We both bet all in everything or nothing on the flip of a single card. Loser strips and takes a picture and must adhere to the conditions of the initial bet." "Are you really so confident that you'll place everything on the line with the flip of a card?" She was nearly screaming. "It's not confidence, Sona," he said as he leaned back with a small smile and his eyes closed. "It's called faith. I'm willing to take a leap of faith. How about you?" She gave him a narrowed look. How could he accept this with such a lack of conviction? Was his hand superior? Was he hoping that she would fold her hand to him and give him a chip count advantage by bluffing? Sona confidently moved all of her chips to the center of the pile, followed closely by Naruto's. "I'll call your bluff and accept the bet," she declared. A 10 of spades. Rias flipped over with a sly smile. Sona turned over her cards. She reached for the pile, but Rias stopped her and nodded to Naruto, saying, "Straight now, if you could please start stripping, Mr. Uzumaki." Who turned an 8 of hearts and a 10 of hearts over. "Straight flush, Sona Tan." Smirking, Naruto said. Sona's eyes went wide with surprise and then she collapsed on her butt. "How?" she said confidently. "I was so sure you were bluffing." "Technically, I only saw one of the 2 cards, the 10 of hearts. I'd been betting simply for the sake of betting and decided to chance it on the last card being flipped." "So your victory was just dumb luck," she yelled. "Arg." Sona started to irritably undress before staring into the camera while the photo was being taken. Sona and her peers were astounded when Naruto rolled his eyes and, with a snap of his fingers, all of the pictures appeared to shred into thousands of pieces until they resembled a pile of ash. Simply put, I only use blackmail if someone deserves it, he stated. Also, you don't have to give me a striptease. Sona's cheeks turned a deep shade of red as she turned her head away. No, I signed a contract with you. I will fulfill my end as per our agreement. If you are so determined to do this, then you don't have to do it now, Naruto replied. You have as long as you need to before you do anything like that. It takes a lot of courage to do what you just did rather than back out of it when I gave you the chance. Naruto's generosity was evident, and Rias and the girls grinned. Sona thanked him with a nod before returning to the student council room with her peerage. A single, sizable transportation circle was called forth by Naruto and Rias. As we said before, under normal circumstances, only one peerage can go get their familiars every month. However, because Naruto hadn't gotten his familiar yet, the familiar master is allowing our two peerages to get our familiars together now. Everyone can get dressed and I'll bring Issei back into the room so we can leave, texted Rias. The girls all dressed rather quickly, but Karen dressed much more slowly than the others, as if to attract Naruto's attention. This made him blush, and Rias attempted to destroy her. Issei was brought in after everyone had dressed, but he was crying manly tears at the sight of all the nude girls and the striptease he thought Naruto had received from the fellow Devil King and president of the student council. He yelled, "You lucky bastard, how could you just do that to me? Leave me out in the cold alone while you're surrounded by hot, naked chicks? You're evil." Naruto laughed as Karen used her black lightning to electrocute the poor boy and then used his twitching leg to drag his smoking, charred corpse into the circle. As they melted into the ground, the group discovered they were in a sizable, eerie forest when they reappeared. Suddenly there was a man with red hair sticking out the front of his blue baseball cap, blue shorts, and white tank top. "I'm the master of the familiar aka Zatoji," said the individual. "If your goal is to find familiars galore, you've come at the right time, that's for sure." Yugito and Naruto both started to perspire. Naruto asked, "Does he remind you of B?" and received a nod in response. "Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing or seeing things. The full moon is out to help you decide and I'll be the one to act as your guide." Following a brief journey during which Issei was led down by a male water sprite, he found his dream familiar in the clothes eating slime. However, he was disappointed and depressed when Naruto destroyed the slimes by himself, but only after destroying the one that was binding his arms. He and Issei watched as the slimes dissolved the girl's clothing into nothing but panties, and then he was electrocuted by a pair of spirit dragons, one blue and the other black, followed by additional pain from Karen and Yugito. Strangely, they were taken aback when the black spirit dragon that landed on Karen appeared to get along with Naruto without shocking him, unlike when Raisei electrocuted Issei upon approaching the girl, despite the familiar master's statement that spirit dragons detest men. For the simple reason that it seemed to enjoy shocking Issei into a charred husk, Karen gave her the familiar name Ryu. "If it's cool with you, Rias, I think my peerage will stick around a bit longer so that we can get our familiars," Naruto joked. "If you want, Karen, you can join them and get to know your familiar better." After giving Rias and her peers a nod, Karen returned to the clubhouse. Over the course of the day, Yugito discovered a Siamese cat that she named Matabi after her mother, but it looked familiar, like Kaneko. Ino formed a bond with a young fairy, whom Sakura named Titania in honor of the fabled fairy queen, and she discovered a pixie named Marie. Hinata found an Undine that actually looked more feminine than the others and named her Umi. Because of the cloud on its forehead, Kuno named the adorable little fox kid she found Kumo. A pair of small orange lion cubs were discovered by Katase and Murayama. Based on the mark on their bodies, they gave them names. Murayama named her lion Kabuto because of the birthmark that resembled an old Japanese helmet perched on the tiger's head, while Katase named her lion Blaze because of the fire-like birthmark on its left paw. When Hanabi picked up a small snake, it changed into a girl with purple hair who was about the same height and build as her. She gave her new acquaintance the name Anko. Naruto was the only one without a familiar by this point, and that was only because, despite his ability to get along with anyone who came his way, none of the familiars seemed to fit his personality. Zatoji appeared to become more and more irritated, but only because it was so hard to identify the young Devil King's personality. The familiar master took the challenge seriously and looked everywhere for a suitable familiar. Just as Zatoji was about to give up, he noticed a familiar but unfamiliar face. A small blonde weasel was riding a kama. It appeared to vanish as it flew after spotting Naruto, but he quickly raised his hand and grasped the kama, preventing the weasel on top from continuing to fly into his chest. Watching the weasel stand up again with a lightheaded expression on its face, The young boy laughed. What did you do that for? I could have gotten hurt, the female weasel had yelled. Could have, would have, probably should have if your best prank was to give me a paper cut, the young devil replied. So what exactly are you? The little weasel proudly declared, I'm a Kamaitachi, and puffed out her tiny chest. Naruto questioned, don't Kamaitachi usually work in threes? The young weasel's head dropped. My brothers were being mean to me because I'm a girl, she grumbled. I'm a cutting weasel, but my brothers said that only boys can be real cutting weasels and I'd be better off as a healing weasel. Naruto scowled. That wasn't nice of them. Girls can be plenty strong. All of the members of my peerage are girls and they could easily take down most boys I know. Really? She inquired. So do you think if I become your familiar, I can get stronger too? Naruto grinned broadly as he nodded. Of course you can. I have no doubt you can become really strong if you want to become my familiar. The weasel nodded, and then a thick cloud of smoke enveloped her. A blonde girl with 4 blonde tailsa, 2 standing up and 2 resembling short pigtailsa, was standing in front of him. When the smoke cleared, her eyes were dark teal, and she was dressed in a white battle dress with a red obi around her waist. She yelled, then please accept me as your familiar, and bowed to Naruto. Naruto nodded and grinned while whispering a few words to bind the familiar to him. The girl grinned, glad to have at last found someone who would support her in building her strength. So what's your name? I can't just go on calling you Kamaitachi-chan forever, ya know. Tamari, the woman uttered as she took the kama from Naruto's grasp while the two observed it transform into an evil-appearing scythe. His words, nice to meet you, Tamari-chan, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, made her laugh. Fish cake? Naruto let out a moan. It means maelstrom. Before the two vanished in a transportation circle, Tamari laughed even harder. The two had no idea that tomorrow would mark the start of an adventure that would put them to the test in ways that would leave nothing the same. Everyone spent the next day spending more time getting to know their familiar faces. Everyone was flaunting their familiars when Naruto returned following the encounter with his familiar, with the exception of Issei, who had failed to obtain a familiar during their journey. When Naruto called for Tamari and revealed that she was a cutting Kamaitachi, it goes without saying that everyone took notice with the exception of Issei. Tamari appeared to get along well with the majority of Naruto's and Ria's peers. Surprisingly, she also seemed to get along with Karen. With a huge wave of concussive blast of wind, Tamari sent Karen crashing into the window as she floated over to Naruto to smother his face in her ample cleavage. Tamari responded that all Kamaitachi, regardless of whether they were knockdown, cutting, or healing types, learned how to use wind magic from their parents. When Rias asked about her use of it, although who was born when dictated the order, Kamaitachi were always born as triplets. Although her healing-type brother felt that he should have been the cutter and Tamari a healer based on their genders, Tamari was trained primarily to be a cutting type because she was born second, while her brothers were knockdown and healing types. Tamari had challenged him to a duel to determine who was the superior cutting type in order to demonstrate her point. Unfortunately, an Undine caught him before he could even use his magic, making him his target. Soon after using her magic, Tamari, at least, was apprehended. And the rest is history. Tamari added that she detested perverts just as much, which is why Karen received criticism while the others simply laughed at this news. Issei appeared to lose her mind. Everyone seemed to notice that Rias was acting strangely. Over the course of the following few days, she had been muttering to herself and concentrating most of her energy on Issei's training. She brushed Naruto off when he tried to ask her what had been bothering her lately. Although he did his best to assist everyone in their training rather than concentrating on just one, Naruto had also been training with his peers. A strange incident occurred at the training grounds approximately a week after Ria's peculiar behavior. While Kataise and Murayama had drawn their swords in the traditional kendo stance, Naruto stood in front of them, his hands clasped at his sides and protected by an invisible glove. You both need to move faster, Naruto told them. A knight's speed is their greatest ally. It allows you to evade an opponent's attack and retaliate with a counter-strike. Both girls were taking deep breaths. Their muscles begged them to stop, and sweat trickled down their foreheads. We're trying, Naruto-kun, Kataise uttered while taking a deep breath. But those weights in addition to the gravity seals you put on us are making it almost impossible. Murayama pleaded, can we take a quick break, Naruto-kun? We're exhausted? Naruto nodded to the two while gazing up at the setting sun. You've both been working hard, especially since I've started placing seals to improve your physical abilities last week. Take a 5-minute break and get some water in you. After your 5-minute break is up, I'll release the weights and the gravity seals and you can do 40 laps around the track to get reacquainted with your new level of speed. Tomorrow we'll be working on the power behind your strikes. Naruto was standing a few feet away when a huge tower of fire erupted as the two knights made their way to the water fountain. All of the girls appeared to rush toward Naruto right away, ready to fight or cast spells in case their king was being targeted. A lone figure with dark blonde hair and dark blue eyes, dressed in clothing that would have been found in an underworld nobleman's closet, emerged as the flames subsided. The figure grinned at Naruto, who easily grinned back. "How have you been?" he asked jokingly, Ruvel, before giving the slightly older man a fist bump. Ruvel said, "I've been wonderful, Naruto." Before examining Naruto's peerage, "Did I interrupt your training?" Naruto gave a headshake. "No, we were just about to finish up." Girls, for those of you who do not know about the underworld, this is my good friend Ruvel Phoenix, heir to the Phoenix clan. Ruvel, these are the members of my peerage you already know: Hinata, Hanabi, Yugito, Karen, and Haku. The others are humans have reincarnated as devils: Sakura, Haruno, Ino, Yamanaka, Katase, Murayama. Each of the girls bows respectfully to the Phoenix heir. "And this lil one," Naruto said soon after he picked up Kuno, as Kuno-chan, her mother Yasaka, Kurama's wife, left her in my care. Ruvel acknowledged with a nod. "I can see they're all incredibly strong. You're doing a good job as their king." Naruto grinned. "Unfortunately, this is not a friendly visit. I have some bad news for you." "What's wrong?" inquired the young king. Naruto's smile quickly faded into a frown as he said, "It's about Riser and Rias. Riser is pushing Father and Lord Gremory into forcing the marriage contract he has with Rias. Rias, being the kind of girl she is, has vehemently refused to marry him, wishing to marry someone of her liking instead of having a husband chosen for her. If Rias still refuses to marry Riser, he will challenge her to a rating game if she loses." It was unnecessary to say the rest. Numerous girls appeared utterly furious, and Naruto's fist was clenched. Someone yelled, "He can't do that," shocking everyone present. That individual was Karen, who everyone knew was in competition with Rias for Naruto's affections. "All right, save Naruto. Actually, he can, and he will, considering he has a full set in his peerage. There is a good chance she'll lose with only 4 active members," Ruvel said. Calmly, Hinata called out, "There must be some way we can help Rias-chan." Even though she was furious about the situation, she knew she had to maintain composure. Karen nibbled on her lip. She was aware that there was something she could say to instill hope in their group, but doing so would prevent her from getting married to Naruto. She deserved to marry someone who loved her and loved her back. Even though Rias was her rival, was she truly deserving of being made to wed a jerk so that Naruto could take her place? Karen's statement, "I may know how we can help Rias," caught everyone off guard. With her head drooping in embarrassment, she took her aunt's diary out from between her breasts, opened it to a specific page, and then gave it to Naruto. "Aunt Kushina and Lady Gremory had initially arranged for you and Rias to marry one another shortly before you were born. I remember reading it in her diary a couple of times." To confirm that what he had heard and seen was accurate, Naruto repeatedly read the page. It was. "If what you say is true, then why is there one between Riser and Rias?" Ruvel asked. "Surely someone would have found the contract by now." "Not if the original copy was destroyed in Kurama's attack," Naruto stated. "A few buildings were destroyed in his rampage, but this diary could act as a historical document if Sears XGG is willing and able to back up the claim, considering he was the official witness, according to Mom. While I would love to join you, I'm afraid I have other business in the underworld to attend to," Ruvel stated. "I'll see you later." "You too, and thanks for the warning," Naruto said as he watched Ruvel explode in a tower of fire before disappearing completely. Naruto looked over at all of his friends with a sad smile. "I know I'm about to ask a lot of you. We've been training hard lately, but if we're going to help Rias, we're likely going to end up starting a fight with Riser and his peerage, maybe even end up in a rating game, albeit an unofficial one. If any of you don't want to do this, I completely understand." Karen shook her head negative. "No, master," she said softly. "Rias deserves to marry someone she loves rather than be forced to marry some asshole." Hinata nodded, incredibly proud of how Karen was taking this news. "Yes, I believe I speak for everyone when I say we will do everything to help Rias find happiness by marrying someone she truly loves. We're with you 100%, my king." Naruto grinned as the girls gathered around him. A glowing circle appeared directly beneath them, and then they started to melt into the ground. "Thank you. Now, let's go." Club for Occult Research. Just as Rias was about to challenge Riser to a rating game, a red magic circle appeared at their feet before every member of Naruto's peerage, including Naruto himself, appeared with little warning. As Naruto looked around the room, he immediately saw Rias standing beside Grafia along with the members of her peerage. He grinned their way. "Hey, Rias-chan." "Hey, Grafia Oni-sama." Grafia looked surprised by the sudden appearance of Naruto and his peerage. "Uzumaki-sama, what brings you here?" Naruto's grin only seemed to grow larger as a glint found its way in his eye. "You know the usual. Visit Rias-chan and her peerage, see if they wanted to train with us, stop a forced marriage in its tracks." Everybody's eyes grew very wide. How did you? Rias started to ask. Ruval Phoenix stopped by for a friendly visit and told me what was happening, Naruto replied, causing Riser to curse under his breath about interfering older brothers. The real question is, why didn't you tell me about it? I could have helped you out. Graphia chose to speak, but Rias averted his gaze. I'm afraid that isn't possible. Uzumaki-sama, this contract was made between Lord Gremory and Lord Phoenix. Naruto pulled out his mother's diary and opened it to the page Karen had shown him. I'm sure if you bring in Sears X to confirm this, then you'll see that a contract was made before I was born between my mother and Lady Gremory, long before the contract with Lord Phoenix and Lord Gremory, a contract that I would be the one to marry Rias to show the connection between the Uzumaki clan and the Gremory clan as a united family. Rias blushed a deep crimson and her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her chest as Graphia read the page in the diary. She too acknowledged that the contract was valid with confirmation from her husband. Riser yelled, "This is total bullshit," as his peers appeared prepared to engage in combat. Now Rias resorts to having someone else lie for her just to keep her from marrying me. Naruto frowned, causing Karen's fists to ignite with black lightning and Yugito's and Kunu's to ignite in vibrant flames. If you believe that my claim is false, then let Graphia bring Sears X to confirm or deny it. As a high-class devil and heir to the Phoenix clan, you do have the right to challenge my claim, just as I, as the Uzumaki clan heir, have the right to challenge your contract to marry Rias. That is enough, called Graphia. You will all stand down immediately. Riser's peerage winced and he laughed dryly. Coming from the strongest queen, I don't see that we have much choice. Sears X peerage is full of monsters after all. Even the trio of girls seemed to disarm themselves, but maintained a sense of readiness. I'm going to contact Sears X to verify and validate or refute your claim to marry Rias-sama. Within moments after she contacted him did Sears X Lucifer appear with a wide grin. Ria-tan, he said before rushing over to his little sister and wrapping her in a massive hug. Oni-sama, Rias uttered, utterly ashamed with a sigh. Graphia took Sears X by the ear and yanked him away from his sister. Sears X-sama, I called you here to confirm or deny Uzumaki-sama's claim that Lady Gremory and Lady Phoenix made a contract with one another for Uzumaki-sama and Rias-sama to be married to one another. Sears X didn't even have to look at the diary. He said bluntly, of course they did. Shocking everyone in the room except Naruto and his peerage. Our families have always been close to one another, so they believed it would only be fair to bind our families together by having Ria-tan marry Naruto-kun. Then what about my contract? Riser insisted. Rias was supposed to be my wife. Father and Lord Gremory's contract said so. Sears X gave a shoulder shrug. Feel free to challenge Naruto and his peerage to a rating game to see whose contract should be accepted. Riser grinned. Alright Naruto Uzumaki, I challenge you to a rating game for the right to marry Rias Gremory. With a, fine, I accept your challenge, Naruto answered. Riser mockingly said, since I have a full set and you only have half of yours, I'll give you 10 days to train, not like it's going to help you, before departing in a tower of fire with his peers. Slap! Rias glared at Naruto with all of her strength and rage, and the sound reverberated through the deserted hallways shortly after Sears X and Graphia had departed. She had requested a private conversation with him. Naruto, of course, concurred. He was unprepared for Rias to slap him, and to be honest, it hurt a lot, not in a physical sense. Only a few seconds passed during that pain. No, even a sword of light couldn't hurt him as much as he could sense her grief and rage flowing through the blow. Rias's crimson bangs cast shadows over her eyes, while her other hand was clenched into a fist. How long? Was all she could think of right now. How long what? He inquired, genuinely interested in what she was discussing. Rias's head snapped up, and anger filled her seafoam green eyes. How long did you know our mothers had arranged for us to get married? Rias became even more enraged as Naruto's eyes softened and a tiny smile appeared on his lips. To be honest, I didn't know until today. Bullshit. Spit out Rias. Naruto said, it's the truth, Rias, with kindness. If you want to blame someone for bringing it up, blame Karen. Rias's eyes widened in shock as her anger subsided after hearing those words. Karen? She inquired, Karen told you? Naruto gave a nod. Back when Sears X Gigi gave me my parents' diaries, Karen wanted to learn more about my mother and the Uzumaki clan. Naturally, I gave her my mom's diary. I almost forgot I gave it to her until this afternoon when she heard what was happening to you. She was the first of my peerage to object to it when we asked Ruval if there was anything we could do. She pulled out her diary and opened it to the page detailing the arranged marriage between me and you. She said to herself in a whisper, but we've never liked each other, why would she do that for me? You'd have to ask her yourself, Naruto said, but if I were a betting man, I would likely say that even though you both got into fights with one another since you met, she probably still considers you one of her best friends. Naruto cracked a grin. But I'm not much of a betting man to begin with. I'm going to give the girls a day off today before we head to the underworld for some real training and I have a certain someone to get into contact with about my own personal training. After saying those final words, Naruto left Rias by herself in the hallway, completely stunned. She needed to think a lot and see someone in particular. He took out his cell phone and entered a number now that he was by himself before someone picked up. The phone rang a few times. Is that offer for training still available? Of course it is, Naruto-kun. The enigmatic voice on the other end of the line stated. What brought this up so suddenly? I'm going to be participating in my first rating game and officially, of course, said Naruto. It's for Rias Grammari's hand in marriage against Riser Phoenix. I see, the voice said thoughtfully. That explains your sudden need for training quite well. Have you made contact with him yet? Naruto let out a sigh. Not yet. The asshole's being difficult and won't let me set up some kind of meeting with him yet. As the voice said, I'm not too surprised to hear that. He is the most stubborn one of us as well as the most powerful. If he does not allow you to meet him, I fear we may force a confrontation at the start of your training. If he cares at all about his daughter's safety, he'll need me to be at the peak of my strength. Naruto grumbled. Neither I nor his wife will allow his anger and pride to place her in danger because I wasn't strong enough to save her. The other person's voice chuckled. There was silence between the two ends as they said, true enough. If there is one thing he will always be afraid of, it's upsetting his wife. How is the little princess doing? She's definitely been learning a thing or two from Yugito, Karen, and Hinata, Naruto freely acknowledged. She's been getting stronger and faster ever since we've started light training with seals and weights. As much as I don't want to rush into this kind of training, I may have to increase the levels of their seals by 2 stages starting tomorrow just to make sure they are really ready to fight. Just don't push them too hard with those seals of yours, Naruto-kun, said a voice. Too much too fast could hurt them rather than help them. I know, Naruto muttered. I was thinking about using clone magic to keep an eye or 10 on their training and to make sure they don't overdo it. Heaven only knows that Sakura has been working harder to keep up even with 2 sacred gears. She feels like the weakest member of my peerage and she isn't wrong about that, but she is easily at the level of most middle-class demons without using them with them. I have little doubt she could stand toe-to-toe against a high-class rook. Ah, said the voice, perhaps she wants to be more like you. You are the strongest person she knows and you have that strength from your bonds with your peerage and friends. Naruto laughed inwardly. Never thought of it that way, but I suppose you would know a person's heart better than I would. The voice said, nonsense, rather loudly. You are already as capable of seeing a person's heart as I am. You just don't realize it because it is connected to your power anyways. Roshi and I will be seeing you here tomorrow after you leave your clones and peerage to their own training. Naruto said, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Goku-sama, and hung up. He glanced down at his watch and saw the time. Looks like it's about time to show them where they'll be living for the next 10 days. He then made contact with them by placing a special sealing circle on his peerage. In a matter of seconds, the small classroom in the old school building was filled with all of Naruto's peers. Hey, girls, I hope you said your goodbyes to your friends because for the next 10 days, you will be training in the Uzumaki clan estate in the underworld. Hinata, Karen, Yugito, Hanabi, and Haku, it will be your jobs to show Sakura, Ino, Kuno, Katase, and Murayama around the estate and assign them a room. While I would love to help train you, I'm afraid I must leave some clones to do that. I have another appointment for some in-depth training in a secret location that I cannot and will not disclose to you. Suffice to say, this training trip I'm going on could be the deciding factor between me marrying Rias and Riser marrying her. As she assumed the role of Naruto's queen, Hinata remarked, we understand, Naruto-kun. Don't worry about us, we'll be more than ready to take on Riser in 10 days, I'll make sure of it. Naruto exclaimed, I know you will, Hinata, grinning candidly. Naruto-kun, Karen called, a little defensively, can I talk to you in private? He said, sure, as she ushered him into the room on the other side of the hallway. Karen appeared completely exhausted. She was troubled by something. She would normally flirt with him when he asked to speak privately, but she had not yet done so. She said, Naruto-kun, first, I know we're doing this for Rias to help her out of this unwanted situation, but I need to get something off my chest. Naruto tilted his head slightly to the side. About our coming raiding game? Karen gave a headshake. She really wanted to blame her rival when she and Rias had spoken, but she was unable to do so. She wasn't even at fault. She had no desire to be involved in Riser's marriage. She eventually became so enraged that she began yelling at her, raising the possibility that she might lose Naruto to her rival before she had a chance to express her feelings to him. Rias told her that although she did love Naruto, she wasn't sure if his heart could be filled by just one person after she had been yelling, crying, and threatening him for about 30 minutes. No, she replied. Well, Yes and no, I know that if you win, you'll marry Rias. You have to win, but I think you should know something. Karen let out a sigh. Okay, this is it, all you have to do is tell him, she muttered to herself. She said, the truth of the matter is I love you, Naruto-kun, and then she closed her eyes. She started to cry as she said, and I don't mean like a sister loves her brother. I honestly, truly love you with all of my heart and soul. And I know you love Rias just as much as she loves you. I just want you to know how I felt. Naruto said, Karen-chan, with a hint of surprise, I'm sorry. Already braced for his rejection, Karen turned her back on him. He said sadly, I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner, and her eyes widened. In truth, I guess a part of me loves you too, and not like a brother loves his sister either, but I never really said or did anything about it because we share the same last name growing up. I really did think about you like a sister, but that was because nobody else shared the Uzumaki name with me. You were the only tie I had to my family. As we got older, those feelings began to change, but I didn't allow myself to feel anything more than a sibling bond between us. Regardless of what happens at the rating game, I want you to know that I'm willing to give us a chance, see where our hearts take us. Does that sound good? She responded. She suddenly crashed into his chest and put her arms around his waist, sobbing softly. Thank you, she said softly to him before pulling away from him and blotting the tears from her eyes. Let's go, I'm sure the other girls are worried by now. Karen trailed behind Naruto as he nodded and left. Everyone appeared to be positively radiant when they met up with the other members of the peerage, knowing that some of the probing members of the peerage must have overheard the conversation. Karen flushed a vivid crimson, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Is everything all right? He inquired, his face displaying obvious bewilderment. Nothing, Naruto-kun, Hinata said, grinning slyly. Nothing at all, we just can't wait to beat Riser and his peerage 10 days from now. Good, said Naruto. Then let's get going, we don't have long to train. After saying that, Naruto extended his arms and used magic to create a unique seal. The group was standing in front of a huge mansion. In a matter of seconds, Sakura, Ino, Katase, Murayama, and Kuno were all staring at the building's enormous size. He pronounced, "Welcome to the Uzumaki Estates," with a flourish. At one point in time, this mansion used to house well over 300 people. Now, only Karen and I are the remaining members of our clan, and I am the heir to the Uzumaki clan. However, as members of my peerage, you are officially members of my family. You will always have a room here. Even if you've gotten to the rank of a high-class devil with your own peerages, you are also entitled to a portion of land owned by the Uzumaki clan in the underworld, which is quite a lot, thanks to our clan's history. The girls all gazed around in amazement. Now, if you will all follow me, I'll show you where everyone sleeps and where you will be staying for the duration of the training period. Naruto-kun, you are free to go to your appointment, said Hinata. Naruto gave a nod, then made a number of clones with his magic. Before I go, you should know that these clones will be overseeing your training and will be able to change the seals on you. The last day you will spend with the seals deactivated to get used to moving and acting without the seals, because they have all of my skills. They are also fragile. One blow and they are gone. As their king descended into a teleportation circle, the girls all nodded in agreement. Unknown place. Naruto saw two people. People is a relative term as he entered a cave tucked away deep inside the side of an active volcano. A well-muscled, elderly-looking man with four tails swinging behind his back was in front of his eyes. He was Son Goku, the four-tailed ape king's son, and his name was Roshi Son Goku-sama, in the same form he had assumed when he first encountered Naruto with Yusaka. Sat directly behind him. Naruto was aware that Son Goku was significantly bigger than he had been and was now, but as far as Naruto was aware, it is rather challenging to converse with a demon lord in their actual form, which was easily 50 stories tall, given that Matabi favored remaining the size of a typical house. Naruto said, "Son Goku-sama," with courtesy, "Master Roshi, a pleasure to see you're both still well." Naruto stumbled after Roshi gave him a back pat and burst out laughing. "No problem at all, Naruto boy, and I must say, you've gotten yourself into the middle of a fine pickle. Win and marry a beautiful girl, lose and never be able to see the woman you love. They can never seem to give you the best hand at any point in your life, can they?" Naruto smiled sheepishly and said, "Maybe, but we all know I do my best under pressure," which made both demons grunt in agreement. The harsh words, "That's enough talking," came from Son Goku. "From this point on, we'll be training you into the dirt, so be prepared." Naruto nodded after swallowing the lump in his throat. All he could hope was that this would help him outwit Riser and his kinsmen. He had an obligation to fulfill. And Naruto Uzumaki never fails to fulfill his commitments. It was today Naruto Uzumaki and Riser Phoenix would be fighting for the right to wed Rias Gremory. Today Rias Gremory and her peerage were in the stands with the other great Saiyans. Gazing down at the stadium, which resembled Kuo Academy exactly in an effort to console Rias during this difficult moment. Akeno was massaging her back. Every member of Rias' peerage was aware of her long-standing affections for the Uzumaki heir and that they were more than reciprocated. When Naruto won the rating game, even Issei was applauding. A depressed king was not a good king. And it was clear that Rias did not want to wed Riser. Falbium, Serafal, Ajuka, and Searzex were seated on their respective thrones. Searzex, Serafal, and Ajuka were all grinning slightly, and Falbium appeared to be about to nod off. This match would be closely watched by many devils. Two heirs are vying for an heiress's hand in marriage. Everyone was aware that female devils loved both childhood romance stories and a good love triangle. Naruto and his peers were seated around a big table in the center of the stadium's occult research room. There was a map of the arena on the table, with the locations of Risers and his peerage marked. Hinata said, "So what's the plan, Naruto-kun?" Naruto inhaled deeply and then exhaled gradually. "I believe that Riser will stay in the background while strategically sending out his peerage to key points on the field. If I had his powers, however, I'd want to be on the front lines. Any lethal blows would just cause him to reform because he thinks we're weak. He'll send out a small force, maybe a couple of pawns, to gauge how we'd react while sending out his stronger pieces to highly strategic points." After Naruto told his queen and pawn, Hinata, "Hanabi, I want your Baikugans active constantly." They nodded and turned on their clan's power. "Ino, can you link up out minds using your psychic abilities?" Ino gave a nod. "I've been testing it out with the peerage during our training. This should be easy." Everybody's minds prickled. She asked in her mind, "Can you all hear me?" Sakura and Naruto said, loud and clear, "Ino-chan," as the others nodded. "Good. Now, I want you and Sakura to head down to the front door to the old school building, but don't leave just yet," Naruto said. "Hinata, I want you to use your Byakugan to determine the approximate strength of the scouting party Riser sends out when we find out how strong they are. I want you two to quickly take them out. Since this is a rating game, nobody will die. Instead, they will be removed as quickly as possible from the game and given medical treatment should those removed need it." "Sakura, Ino is a pretty big part of my plan to beat Riser, so protect her at all costs," he said to her. She gave a nod. With Riser not knowing Ino is half-fallen angel, her light magic will cause his powers to weaken considerably. Not enough to win the game, but enough to give us the advantage should we need to confront him. "Karen-chan, as our primary spellcaster and healer, I want you to act as a sniper and stay by my side with Kuno. I do not intend to stay in this building while you girls fight, so we will be joining the fray. Haku, Hinata, and Katase will be one team and Yugito, Hanabi, and Murayama will be the other. Hinata and Hanabi, using the psychic link, I want you to act as the scouts for the peerage. You will be primarily in charge of telling us where Riser is positioning his peerage, their strength, their movements, and their numbers. Yugito, do not attempt to use Senjutsu if I am not nearby. If you have no other choice, such as if the enemy you are facing is too strong, contact me and I will head to your position as fast as possible." Yugito nodded, understanding that she still lacked total control over her Senjutsu and that attempting to use it without Naruto present to assist her would only cause problems during the rating game. "So right now, we have 4 teams. Ino and Sakura will be Team 1, Haku, Hinata, and Katase will be Team 2, Yugito, Hanabi, and Murayama will be Team 3, and lastly, Karen-chan, Kunohan, and myself will be Team 4 if I'm right. Riser will set up some combination of his knights and rooks at the athletic clubhouse, so I want Team 1 to try and take the gymnasium. I have no doubt that he plans on sending a few of his pawns there to take it over as a forward operating base." Sakura and Ino both nodded. They said, "Got it, in Sich." Haku, Hinata, and Katase nodded in agreement as they said, "Team 2, I want you to go through the track field and try to take the assembly hall." Yugito, Hanabi, and Murayama all nodded in agreement, understanding that he was sending them because they were the ones who knew the layout the best. Team 3 will be going through the Kendo training hall to take that as another fob. For now, Team 4 will have to stay back just in case Riser's pawns make it past our other groups. Kuno, I want you to lay out some traps around the forest in case anyone tries to take us from behind. Karen, I want you to form an invisible barrier around the entire building. While Karen chanted a few words to conjure a massive barrier around the building that would take time to break through and let Naruto's peerage depart, Kuno nodded and leapt off to the forest behind the building. Naruto closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the building's floor. "I'm going to need to take a bit of time to focus and gather my magic if I'm going to fight Riser, so it's up to you and Kuno to keep me safe until I'm ready. All right, Karen-chan?" Karen's eyes had a gentle glow. "Don't worry, master," she said, purposefully omitting her usual seductive purr at the same moment that Naruto's familiar, Tamari, was called forth in her human form. Karen's pet sprite dragon materialized on her shoulder, saying, "Nobody will make it close enough to disturb you, we'll both make sure of that." Tamari said courteously, "What can I do for you today, Naruto-sama?" "I'm currently in the middle of a raiding game and I need you to help Karen and Kuno look after me while I gather my energy to fight Riser." Naruto said. She gave Karen, whom she knew to be a pervert, a quick glare before following her instructions and floating close to the top of the old schoolhouse to feel and see anyone approaching. She could quickly determine the cause of a wind disturbance from nearly a half-mile away using her wind magic. Tamari told her master and his group, "The enemy's forces are closing in on the building and are approaching the barrier." When Naruto gave the order, Karen and Tamari acknowledged each other. "I want you to impede their progress long enough for Karen to prepare enough magic bullets to take them out with one shot," Naruto said. Tamari hovered a few feet behind the barrier's edge after floating down to its outer edge on her battle fan in front of her. Two women dressed as maids emerged, grinning arrogantly. The brunette questioned, "Is this all he sends to face us? Such a shame, and here our master thought he was smart?" Tamari gave a snort. "Please," she said. "Naruto-sama doesn't need to send anyone else to deal with weaklings like you, to be honest. He could probably kill you both with ease, as could the rest of his peerage. He only sent me to tell you that if your master forfeits, he won't be forced to largely embarrass him in front of such a grand audience." The two appeared to be boiling with anger. "It should be your master who forfeits. Nobody can beat the immortal Phoenix clan. Immortality only means that he's little more than a punching bag for someone like Naruto-sama," Tamari said bluntly. "Besides, how can he hope to win with two members of his peerage removed from play so quickly?" Suddenly, a sharp blow went through both of their bodies, and then the only sound they could hear was the thud of their bodies hitting the floor. They noticed a bleeding hole when they looked down at their chests. The two had somehow vanished from the field in a matter of seconds. The words, "Lord Riser Phoenix's pawns, Marion and Burrent, have been removed from the field," were spoken by Grafia. Naruto and his peerage smiled, but knew that this was just the beginning. Tamari decided to return to her weasel form and hide in the shadows of the building. "Good shots, Karen-chan," Naruto complimented, earning a smile and a bow from his beloved bishop. "Teams 1, 2, and 3, your phase of this mission has started. Good luck and keep in contact." The 8 girls nodded and headed out in the direction Naruto gave them. If luck was on their side, they could trap Riser in a pincer maneuver, have Ino weaken him with her light magic, and bring Naruto in for the checkmate. Alongside Team 1, Ino and Sakura quickly found themselves in the middle of the gymnasium. It was dark, and no one appeared to be there yet. "Over the psychic link," Ino said. "Master, we are the only ones here. I believe we may have taken the gymnasium." "Don't be so sure," Naruto said gravely. "Hinata Harem has the longest range with her clan's power, and she says there are at least 4 signatures in the building, probably a rook and 3 pawns. Be on your guard." They were momentarily blinded when the gym's lights suddenly came on. They leapt out of their way when they heard 2 loud motors approaching. As soon as their eyes adjusted to the new light, they were able to see 2 turquoise-haired twin girls standing where they were, brandishing matching chainsaws. Behind them were a woman with long jet black hair, a large bust, and a blue Chinese dress. The woman with the blue hair was dressed like Tamari, Naruto's partner and pet. She was dressed in a crimson happy coat, Zori sandals, and a white haori with a red obi. The blue-haired girl held a seemingly unremarkable staff in her hands. One of the turquoise twins yelled, "Looks like your master has sent you to your deaths." 4 against 2 are terrible odds," said the other. Sakura mockingly said, "Not if our quality exceeds your quantity. After all, with a master like yours, I'd actually be embarrassed to be seen in public or even to be known as a member of his peerage." One of the twins yelled, "You take that back," with anger. "Master Riser is the best master in the underworld and nobody can hope to beat him." Ino teasingly said, "Actually, I don't think your master stands a chance against ours," which made the twin pawns glow red with anger. "Unlike your master, ours is willing to put everything on the line to protect Lady Rias, even his life, if that is what it would take. On the other hand, your master would recklessly and callously send you all to your deaths if it got him closer to his ambition. Because of that alone, Riser could never hope to compete with Naruto." The twins were so furious that they charged Ino and Sakura, ready to cut them to pieces with their chainsaws, but they were totally destroyed when the two struck them with a single, strong blow. "Lord Riser Phoenix's pawns, Eel and Nell, have been removed from the field," Sakura said. "Now I believe the odds are even again," in a charming way. Ino responded, a little disappointed that those twin pawns were so easily agitated and defeated. "Then again, the odds were always in our favor if that is the quality of Riser's pawns, much less his peerage," Ino said. The Ravenet said, "You should not undervalue our master's peerage, without emotion, as your next opponents. We won't be so foolish as to fall prey to your taunts." Before Ino made a number of glowing pink daggers out of nothing that circled behind Sakura's back, the two had a silent conversation. Sakura removed a pair of fingerless gloves, pulled them down over her hands until she was satisfied, and strapped them on before assuming a position she had been practicing for the previous few months prior to Naruto challenging Riser for Ria's hand in marriage. The battle was going to be drawn out using Team 2. Kataise, Haku, and Hinata were cautiously making their way to the school's track and field area. Haku and Kataise also stopped in their tracks as Hinata's pale eyes scanned the entire space before pausing. Haku turned to face Hinata, who had icy, intent eyes. Asking, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, Haku-chan." Hinata grinned. "It just seems like we're surrounded." After drawing her sword, Kataise faced Hinata. She was supposed to be treated as though she were defending Naruto since she was his queen. Unexpectedly, 7 of Riser's kinsmen emerged from the woods with their cat ears and skimpy schoolgirl attire that nearly exposed their breasts. 2 appeared to be sisters. One was dressed like a punk biker, with a single gray eye visible and a mask covering half of her face. Her light brown hair was cropped short. Another had green eyes, light brown hair, and a large amount of armor. She was brandishing a sword and had a dagger strapped to her back. Like Hinata and Hanabi, the 5th had long black hair with a bluish tint. She carried a huge sword on her back and was dressed in red shorts, knee-high armored greaves with matching gauntlets, and a white sleeveless shirt with black accents. The 6th member had long black hair and wore a kimono in shades of pink, red, and white. Hinata and Haku already knew the last participant. She had bright blue eyes, blonde hair styled in princess curl pigtails, and a pink dress that made her look like a princess or someone of high birth. "It's been a long time, Lady Revel," Hinata grinned, "and I see Lord Riser considers us such a great threat that he tries to overwhelm us. I'm sure Naruto takes comfort in that. I know I do." "Lady Hinata," said Revel with a smile, "I don't want to fight you, but I will if you do not tell Lord Naruto to surrender." Hinata appeared to smile with a hint of sadness. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, Lady Revel. You see, Rias is one of my closest friends. So long as she is dead set against marrying your brother, I refuse to back down. The same goes for Naruto-kun and the rest of his peerage. If you must talk some sense into anyone, talk some into your brother. Believe me when I say that Naruto will not stop fighting until Rias is freed from this forced marriage." Revel turned to face Haku and inquired, "How is Naruto?" Haku grinned. "He's the same as he's always been, kind, thoughtful, caring. If he were none of those things, we wouldn't be in this raiding game, now would we?" Revel gave a feeble smile. "I suppose not. He's always loved Rias. Even when they were my age, Ruvel would tell me stories of times when he would spend time with them in the Uzumaki estate." "Yes, and I'm sure you can see why Riser cannot win this raiding game," Hinata replied. "There is simply too much on the line for Naruto to simply give up, so please surrender." Revel shut her eyes. Revel's body glowed blue as she was taken off the field. "Very well, I, Revel Phoenix, am outmatched. I surrender. I won't forgive Naruto if he loses. My brother is strong." Graphia spoke once more as her body vanished. "Lord Riser Phoenix's bishop, Lady Revel Phoenix, has quit the field." The other 6 armed themselves against Kataise, Haku, and Hinata. Hinata said, "So which 2 do you ladies want?" The dark aura enveloped Kataise's body, and she smiled. "I got the 2 knights. I'll show them the fruits of my labor and my dedication to protecting Lord Naruto and Lady Rias." The 2 catgirls were under Haku's icy gaze. She said, "I call the 2 kittens," with a detached tone. Hinata grinned. "Then I suppose that leaves me with the bishop and the rook. Try not to get any blood on your clothes. It would take forever just to wash out without staining." The 2 said, "Of course, Lady Hinata," and then hurried to their opponents. Group 3 Hanabi, Yugito, and Murayama were strolling through the kendo hall as a trio like her sister. Hanabi kept her Byakugan active. Hanabi could see no one else in the building, and it was silent. "Naruto-kun, the kendo hall is empty," she informed him via the link they had shared. "We've taken the kendo hall." "Good job, girls," Naruto said. "For now, hide from Hinata's and Sakura's last reports. We've taken out 4 pawns and a bishop. Sakura and Ino are fighting a rook and a pawn. Hinata, Kataise, and Haku are fighting 2 knights, a bishop, a rook, and 2 pawns. That leaves 1 more pawn and his queen unaccounted for. He's probably holding back his queen, though I'm almost done gathering my strength. So Kuno, Karen, and I will be leaving base shortly to join in the fray before we lead a final fight against Riser with anyone who hasn't been taken out. Watch yourselves and keep safe." Hanabi whispered to Yugito and Murayama, "My sister, Haku, and Kataise are fighting 6 members of Riser's peerage, and Sakura and Ino are fighting a rook and a pawn. All that's left are 3 pawns and Riser's queen that have not been encountered yet. For now, let's hide somewhere and see if his 3 pawns show up." The trio hid after nodding. Hanabi was small enough to fit beneath the bleachers, so she hid there after the club finished practicing. Murayama hid inside the equipment storage room, which housed the shinais and other kendo equipment. After practicing hard, the girls would undress and take a shower in the locker room, where Yugito hid. Within moments, Hanabi spotted 2 pairs of feet touchdown in the building. She could see exactly who it was with her Byakugan activated, and her eyes widened in terror. His queen is here with Riser's other pawn. Hanabi yelled into his mind throughout the mental link. Naruto retorted, "Get out of there, you 3. She's more than willing to blow up the building to get you out of the game. Just try and stay alive. Kuno, Karen, and I are on our way there to help." All 3 of them were forced to flee their hiding places and sprint to the door by Hanabi, Yugito, and Murayama in a matter of seconds. Riser's queen and pawn grinned, then snapped her fingers, causing a huge explosion that shook the structure. After turning around and drawing her sword, Murayama slashed downward into the explosion, directing as much of her devil energy as she could into the blade. The 3 teammates were sent flying out the doors before the building completely collapsed around them as a result of the explosion, even though the flames appeared to move out of their way. After falling a few yards from the structure, Hanabi rolled through the grass and dirt before coming to a slow stop. She struggled to her feet and tried to get her bearings. She yelled to her teammates, "Is everyone okay?" Murayama called out, "I'm fine," as she struggled to stand up a few feet away from her. Yugito was back up, her feet and fists covered in ghostly blue flames. "Aside from the ringing in my ears, I'm fine too. Nothing kicking the ass of the bitch who caused that explosion won't fix," she yelled. Fortunately, her natural ability to recover in a battle like this came from being the daughter of Matabi, the 2-tailed hellfire cat, not to mention her innate capacity to lessen the harm that fire magic and exposure's flames can do to her. She is not immune to them, though she would be destroyed if she were caught in a big enough explosion, but fire was her element, and it was difficult to harm her with fire of any kind. The queen called out, "So you 3 survived," while the pawn stood behind her. "I'm impressed. An explosion of that magnitude would have killed a mid-class devil. Next time, I'll just increase the power." "What do we do?" Hanabi was asked by Murayama. "Naruto-sama is on his way," Hanabi muttered. "We just have to hold out until Team 4 arrives to back us up." As Hanabi assumed the gentle fist, the notorious fighting style of the Hyuga clan, her hands glowed blue with her devil energy. Murayama narrowed her eyes at the queen and pawn while maintaining a standard kendo stance with her sword. The kendoka remarked, "I can take care of the pawn. You and Yugito-chan can focus on the queen until Naruto-sama arrives." Murayama charged the pawn as Hanabi and Yugito hurried toward the queen. After saying those final words, Group 4 Naruto slowly started to stand up again as his blue eyes opened. His words, "We're moving out." Karen appeared somewhat taken aback by the news. She questioned, "Why? What's happening?" Naruto let out a sigh. "Riser sent out Yubaluna to confront Team 3, he said. I thought he would hold her back until the odds were closer to his favor, but by losing so many of his pieces, he wants to even the playing field. Yugito needs to go into Senjutsu mode in order to fight back against her and even the odds." Kuno and Karen both nodded understandingly. Tamari emerged from the darkness. "Is there anything I can do to help, Naruto-sama?" "No," he replied. "While I'm nowhere near as strong as I'd like to be, we can't afford to stay in the old school building. Thank you for your assistance in the raiding game, Tamari-chan. I appreciate it." Although it was difficult to see in her Kamaitachi form, Tamari flushed. She vanished in a tiny windstorm after saying, "Very well, I hope you win this raiding game, Naruto-sama." Naruto said, "Come on, girls," and then he opened the ORC's windows. "We've got friends to help." Following those final words, Karen's sensor abilities guided Naruto, Karen, and Kuno toward Team 3's position as they leapt out of the building, spread their wings, and raced toward the battlefield. "Believe in me, my darling Rias," Naruto told himself. "I'll make sure we have a happily ever after if you have faith in me. The one we have always envisioned." Rias was anxiously observing from the stands. Sakura and Ino were competing with their rivals Haku, Katase, and Hinata were all comparable, though Hinata appeared to be holding back considerably on her opponent. Nevertheless, her opponent appeared more worn out. Although there were no obvious bruises, she could see that Hinata had been gradually tearing at her opponent's muscles with her gentle fist and Byakugan until she could hardly stand without being in terrible pain. When Hinata felt like it, she appeared to be quite cruel, using her amiable exterior to trick people into thinking she was just a nice girl. But she was alarmed by Riser's queen Yubaluna's early entry into the conflict. She believed Naruto had lost one of his knights and 2 pawns in the explosion, but they all seemed to have earned their extraordinary durability as they bounded out of the door leading to the Kendo Club's training hall with little to no visible damage. Because her mother was one of the strongest yokai in the world and Yugito was a fairly powerful yokai, she was back up much faster than Hanabi and Murayama. She then witnessed Naruto depart from the security of his base and move toward the trio confronting the queen and the last pawn of Riser's lineage. She worried for a moment he would leave the building, but why? There, he was secure and safe. She asked herself, why would Naruto leave headquarters? Maybe he found out about Yubaluna's appearance on the field. Akeno said. Her appearance definitely shifted the flow of battle all of a sudden, so it wouldn't surprise me if he went to support his peerage against such a strong opponent, being Riser's strongest piece. If they can somehow remove her from the game, his chances of winning increase exponentially. Rias acknowledged with a nod, but it didn't make her feel any less anxious. With a shout, "Don't worry, bucko," Issei said. Naruto-senpai and his peerage are all insanely strong. Nobody's gonna stop them from winning, not even that Yakitori Teme. I mean, did you see how his sister left after seeing Hinata and the others? That's because Naruto and his peerage were good friends of the Phoenix family, Rias said, shocking her peers with the revelation. Well, most of the Phoenix family. Naruto's best friend is actually Riser's older brother, Ruvel Phoenix. He's known Ruvel for about as long as he's known me, and even got to know Revel when she was born before he left for the human world. It's entirely likely that Revel was told stories about Naruto by Ruvel growing up and she came to idolize him. It's why she didn't want to fight his peerage. She likely has an idea of what Naruto is capable of and feels like she wouldn't stand a chance against him or any member of his peerage. Wow, Issei muttered. What kind of relationship does he have with Riser then? Rias gave a snort. Relationship? Those two can barely stand being in the same room with one another, she replied. You see, Riser believes that pure blood devils should have some kind of power that can be applied in a battle to be considered a member of the 72 pillars. Naruto's power doesn't have many, if any, actual combat-ready applications aside from cases of supporting a yokai who is beginning to learn senjutsu or to prevent them from being overwhelmed by the hatred that using senjutsu brings. I, on the other hand, have the power of destruction, which has several uses in battle, though most of them are offensive. As such, Riser considers Naruto as little more than an extra demon. Naruto believes the exact opposite. So long as a devil, be they half-blood or pure blood, bears the blood of their clan, they should be allowed to join the 72 pillars regardless of their power. This ideal would, in truth, strengthen the 72 pillars rather than weaken it. But pure blood devils are few and far between, and many people believe that having more pure blood devils of high standing would strengthen our society. Needless to say, many high-class devils would never support Naruto's ideals and would sooner support Riser's. Mid-class and low-class devils, however, see Naruto's ideals as the light at the end of the tunnel, a way for their clans to be reborn and rise to the heights they once held prior to the Great War, she said. Naruto's ambitions are far greater than any devil ever dreamed of achieving, and there are many clans who would and do support him. My clan, the Gremory clan, has always supported Naruto's clan in their attempts to reunify the clans of old and bring back the 72 pillars to their full strength. We've always seen our servants, whether they're devil, yokai, or reincarnated devils, as family. The Uzumaki clan felt similarly, and our clans were united in all but blood. The Gremory clan has always and will always support Naruto-kun's ambitions. Kiba began. So if Naruto wins and you actually marry him, but she didn't finish. Rias gave a nod. When I marry Naruto-kun, our families will finally have the union we had always hoped to have one day. Not only that, but both of our clans will become significantly stronger from the union, and our ideals will carry with it more weight. It's the first step to restoring the 72 pillars and uniting devils of all classes rather than dividing us and creating a hatred between the high class and the lower classes. Akeno grinned. When you marry him, she interrogated. You sound awfully confident in that statement. Rias shut her eyelids. She said, it's because I believe in him, loud enough for her peers to hear. I believe in his heart and his ability to overcome anything that gets in his way. After all, he promised me orange-haired children one day. Everyone said, orange-haired children, which made Rias laugh. When we were young and Naruto was going to get his evil piece set, he mentioned that his dream was to be stronger than my brother and become Satan Orange. When asked why, he said that orange was his favorite color. His mother had red hair and his father had blonde. Red and yellow make orange, so it only seemed natural that he loved the color orange. After that, I asked him if our children would have orange hair and he just blushed and sputtered out gibberish, she said with a grin on her face. It was so cute, I wish our parents could have seen it. Issei said, so you've always had feelings for Naruto-senpai, and Rias nodded. Truthfully, all of the members of his peerage have feelings for him in one way or another, Rias said. Naruto has another power, but not one that is passed down through family like my power of destruction or his power to subjugate hatred. Rather, it is one that not many realize they have been affected by his power is to make anyone he meets his friend with ease. Even his enemies will be swayed by this power, never knowing how it happened until it's far too late. Lord Hiyashi Hyuga, Hinata and Hanabi's father, fell prey to this power of his, which is why he accepted Naruto's offer to have Hinata and Hanabi to join his peerage. Truthfully, I don't think a single member of his peerage doesn't have romantic feelings for him. Issei exclaimed, why couldn't I have a power like that? Do you know how many women I could add to my harem with that power? It's no fair. While the others gasped at the admission, Asia gave Issei a pat on the back. The lust of Issei was, indeed, comparable to that of a succubus or an incubus. Alright, Karen turned out to be far more lustful than Issei could ever hope to be, so perhaps she wasn't a succubus. By saying, that's all beside the point, Rias took the focus away from Issei and put it back on herself. The fact remains that Riser and Naruto have no love for one another. You might even say that they are rivals, though that term doesn't quite do them justice. I think a more fitting comparison would be to say that Riser is what devils strive to be, while Naruto's attitude, nature, and power are more befitting an angel. She smiles. Yes, Naruto is the angel of kindness, mercy, and boundless love, while Riser is a devil of greed, ruthlessness, and pride. Those descriptions are about as close as you could come to define a relationship between those two. The comparison seemed to get a nod from everyone. To be honest, they could all agree that Naruto's presence made many of them very happy because he made Rias and everyone around him smile, which brightened their day a little bit. When Naruto was around, even his peers appeared to smile more. If he makes you happy, bucko, then we will support your relationship, said Kiba. Better Naruto-senpai than Yakitori, Kaneko called out, pleased to report that she and the blonde-haired devil got along well. He was her devoted Oni-san, and she was his priceless Imouto. Even though he had the ability to control senjutsu, she was still terrified to practice it. He never forced her to practice it, though, and she was aware that he would be ready to assist her when she felt ready. They could all feel the tension in the air as they gazed down at the field, where Naruto, Kuno, and Karen were racing toward Hanabi, Yugito, and Murayama's position to assist them in defeating such a formidable foe. They were all putting their hopes and bets on the Uzumaki clan heir, and this was only the start of the struggle to keep Rias happy. One team, the staff and the blue-haired woman, stood next to her ally. My name is Mira, loyal pawn of Lord Riser Phoenix. And I am Shueilin, loyal rook for Lord Riser Phoenix, the woman with the Chinese appearance and the skimpy navy blue kippah called out. I suppose it's only right for you two to know the people who are going to take you down, Sakura said. I'm Sakura Haruno, Naruto's rook and faithful friend. And I am Ino Yamanaka, pawn and friend of Naruto Uzumaki, Ino replied. This isn't personal, but we won't allow your master to lay a hand on Rias. After saying, you don't have a choice, Mira hurried Ino and pointed her staff at her midsection. Two of the glowing daggers swiftly deflected it, and the other three advanced to slash at her from various directions. By using her staff and body to protect herself from harm, Mira managed to barely avoid the three blows. Then, after closely observing her opponent, she leapt away from Ino. Meanwhile, Sakura had already engaged Shueilin in combat. They were trading blows, but neither of them was really doing much damage because of their extreme durability. In all honesty, Sakura was using some fundamental techniques she had learned during their 10-day training session to test out Shueilin's movements. Rook, Riser's busty, was surprisingly nimble and evasive. Sakura's unnatural speed and strength shocked Shueilin as well. She would undoubtedly improve her innate skills by astounding amounts while training with the Runecaster Supreme. Her strength was easily that of a mid-class rook, and her speed was comparable to that of a low-class to mid-class knight. She was surprisingly good for a devil who had been reincarnated. She also questioned whether her commitment to stopping her Lord Riser and Lady Rias from getting married was the source of her strength. For a few seconds, Sakura had plenty of time to deliver a much more powerful blow because Shueilin was distracted by assessing her opponent. The Pinkette yelled, "Don't underestimate me," and then unleashed a roundhouse kick that was boosted by her devil magic. The kick went deep into Shueilin's ribs and just under her arm. Shueilin felt a couple of her ribs crack, and her eyes grew wide. Additionally, the magic in Sakura's kick caused the busty rook to crash into a nearby wall and tear off her top. In the stands up there, Issei yelled, "Opie," as he struggled to get past the barrier after witnessing Riser's rook's incredible bust. He crashed into a wall after Kaneko punched him in the head. In response to this yell, she muttered under her breath, "Useless pervert," and then she sat down again on Rias' lap as Rias continued to stroke the white hair of the young girls. Let's go back to Team 1. What the hell? Shueilin exclaimed, struggling to conceal her luscious breasts. What kind of technique was that? Sakura grinned. Sorry, but I'm not inclined to tell my opponents about my skills. Moving more quickly than she had previously, Shuilin attempted to kick Sakura in the jaw, but Sakura narrowly avoided it, but her clothing did tear, exposing her C-cup breasts to the world as a tear appeared in Sakura's top and her skirt fell off. Exposing black bike shorts, she ripped off the remainder of her top and returned to her fighting stance, rather than covering herself to preserve her modesty. "Did you truly think something like trying to preserve my modesty would allow you an advantage?" Sakura inquired. "Everyone in Naruto's peerage, including Naruto himself, have seen me naked and I have no problem fighting like this." Shuilin yelled, You perverted woman, how can you be so casual about being naked in front of so many people?" "Because I've said it before and I'll say it again," Sakura uttered sullenly. "What matters most to me is my master's dreams and wishes. If his wish is to make Rias happy by preventing her from marrying someone she obviously has no interest in, then I would gladly die to see it come true. Someone like you or your master could never hope to have such dedication. That's why Riser will not win against Naruto." Shuilin's eyes grew wide, and she actually took a small step back from Sakura. What was this feeling? How did she feel? She had never felt this before. No one had ever made her feel this way, not even in the rating games she'd won for her master. Is it possible? She muttered to herself, fear, and then shook her head. She yelled, "No, I won't lose to her. I can't lose to someone like you." As she charged Sakura with fresh vigor, she threw punches and kicks at her opponent in a relentless attack. However, the barrage of attacks appeared to be easily blocked or avoided by Sakura. Sakura paused her defensive stance to check for weaknesses in her defense. Shuilin had displayed numerous weaknesses, but they were swiftly neutralized as a fresh assault was launched. "What's wrong?" a furious Shuilin yelled. "Fight back. After all that talk about dedication, is this the best you can do?" She saw her opening. After dodging a kick, she screamed, "Just stay down," then ducked under her guard and struck Shuilin's head with a critical fist, sending her flying in a heap. Before she vanished, her body glowed white. Lord Riser Phoenix's Rook, Shuilin, had been removed from the field. Graphia's voice thundered over the arena. Lord Naruto Uzumaki's pawn, Ino Yamanaka, has been removed from the field. Sakura's eyes widened when she turned to see Ino lying on the ground with Myra's staff crashing against her head. Just a few minutes ago, while drawing 2 more daggers, Ino kept them in her hand instead of controlling them with her psychic abilities. She had been using some of her daggers as ranged weapons. The expert pawn of Riser Phoenix had been avoiding her, using her staff to bat aside the few that would have really hurt her, so even though Myra's clothes had been ripped, no blood had been shed. Mira could tell that Ino had fought before and was a strong opponent, but she didn't have the experience of fighting in several rating games before. Ino was barely perspiring and remained composed. She had been exerting all of her energy on Mira, which had worn her out. There was little question that the blue net would be taken out of the field if this continued. She needed to make the most of her one chance. Sakura and Ino were sent alone to take this building as a fob, since it was clear that they functioned best as a team. Mira turned to watch as one of her opponent's teammates kicked Shuilin hard enough to rip off her top and probably get past her defense to break some ribs. As she shifted her target from Ino to the unprotected Sakura, she braced herself. She was about to witness her staff strike the Rook's skull when Ino confronted her, her daggers poised to pierce her abdomen. Ino crashed to the ground after her staff rocked her skull, but she looked down at her stomach. Her stomach was pierced by the 2 daggers. "Make a sacrifice." Myra's body glowed white as she glanced down at her opponent. She heard Graphia say, "Lord Riser Phoenix's Rook, Shuilin, has been removed from the field." Over the speakers on the other side of the arena, "Lord Naruto Uzumaki's pawn, Ino Yamanaka, has been removed from the field." Before a glowing red fist struck Sakura's skull and her vision turned black, Mira turned around and saw the anger in Sakura's eyes. "Lord Riser Phoenix's pawn, Mira, has been removed from the field," said Graphia. Right now Sakura dropped to her knees. She had let Naruto down. Naruto's battle against Riser would now be much more challenging than it could have been because she failed to protect Ino. She glanced at her hand. Critical covered her hand twice. She broke down in tears. She was aware that Ino was alive, that after being taken out of the arena, she was probably recovering. Nevertheless, she was internally tormented by the feeling that she had let the woman she loved down. She wiped the tears from her eyes and shook her head. She could still fight because she was still in the game, but she had no way of knowing where to go now that Ino's psychic connection was gone. Naruto's familiar voice called out, "Sakura-san," as did Tamari. "Can you hear me?" "Yes, but where are you?" Sakura queried out loud. After Naruto-sama heard Ino had been removed from the field, he summoned me as a backup form of communication. "Right now, I'm speaking with you through the wind," Tamari said. "Naruto-sama needs you to meet up with Team 2 and help back them up if they are in need of assistance. He also says not to blame yourself and that while Ino-san would have greatly helped in the fight against Riser, that she was not 100% necessary for him to beat him. He is proud that you two were able to defeat 4 of Riser's pieces." Sakura said, "Thank you, Tamari," when she smiled weakly. and thank Naruto-kun for me. Tell Hinata that I'm on my way over to her position now. Sakura hurried toward the track field from the gym without saying another word. The second team Graphia's voice echoed, with Hinata frowning slightly. Lord Riser Phoenix's rook, Shueilin, has been removed from the field. Lord Naruto Uzumaki's pawn, Ino Yamanaka, has been removed from the field. Lord Riser Phoenix's pawn, Mira, has been removed from the field, she said then. Ino had been beaten. Sakura was still active, which was undoubtedly a good thing, even though she didn't hear her name over the speakers. Even so, Rook must be devastated to lose her partner in the middle of her first raiding game. Hinata-sama, Tamari said, Naruto-sama wished for me to inform you that Sakura is on her way to provide support against your opponents. Hinata grinned. Thank you, Tamari-chan, she said quietly, we greatly appreciate it. Hinata caught Haku's attention. She inquired, is everything alright, Hinata-sama? Hinata gave a nod. Sakura-chan has finished with her battle and has taken the gym successfully, though not without a cost. Naruto-kun says that he is sending her to us as support and is using Tamari-chan to relay commands to us since Ino-chan's connection was broken when she was removed from the field. Still, Sakura-chan and Ino-chan did incredibly well to defeat 4 of Riser's pieces on their own, Haku said. Indeed, it's quite commendable of them, Hinata concurred. Riser's punk biker Rook yelled, if you haven't noticed, we're in the middle of a fight, as Hinata attempted to punch him but was sidestepped and a glowing palm slashed across her outstretched arm, causing the Rook to scream in agony. The Rook tried to contain another cry of agony as Hinata glanced at her as she leapt away from the queen. Hinata stated, obviously, you have forgotten something important, with a gentle tone. I am the heiress to the Hyuga clan and I am more than proficient with my clan's fighting style enough so that bypassing your Rook's defense is like child's play to someone like me. Ever since we've been fighting, I've been slowly tearing away at your muscles. The Rook's stunned eyes grew wide. Now you see just who has been controlling the tide of this battle, Hinata stated. I've simply been making small, barely noticeable tears in your muscles, and with every movement, every twitch, and every attack, you've been destroying your muscles and expending all of your energy while I've been wasting as little energy as possible. Truthfully, I feel like I can continue to fight like this for several more hours, maybe even days. The Rook growled, how could a bishop be so fast? Which made Hinata laugh. A bishop? She was asking, I'm not Naruto-kun's bishop, I'm his queen. The bishop's and Rook's eyes grew wide with utter terror. A queen? But according to Lord Riser, she was a bishop, and his queen would accompany him. Hinata chuckled into her palm. She remarked, I see now, your master underestimated Naruto-kun's mind. I suppose it's only natural after all. Your master made the mistake of upsetting one of my closest friends and the woman who holds a piece of his heart in her hands now. If I were you, I'd surrender. The Rook shook herself out of it, but it appeared as though she really wanted to. There's no way I could look Riser in the face if I backed down now, she responded. Hinata shook her head and sighed. I suppose I should do the kind thing and defeat you then so that the healers might repair your muscles. In an instant, the Rook's heart had been crushed by Hinata's glowing palm, and her body had glowed before vanishing. Lord Riser Phoenix's Rook, Isabella, has been removed from the field, stated Graphia. Hinata pivoted and positioned herself in front of the bishop, who was positioned far away from the majority of the fighting. Hinata seemed to glide toward the bishop, who started to back away. She hurled fireball after fireball at Hinata, but it appeared that her glowing palms could easily swat them away. She kept retreating until the Sea Tree Girl's ice attacks caused her to slip on some icy ground in the direction of her 2 feline allies. She realized Hinata was even nearer to her after she fell. Stay away, she exclaimed, her eyes welling with tears. Stay away, I don't want to die. Hinata said, if you want to blame someone for this, blame your master, as she struck the bishop with her glowing hand. She yelled, I surrender, just before the palm hit her. When she opened her eyes, Hinata was grinning warmly at her. She vanished from view as her body glowed white. Lord Riser Phoenix's bishop, Mirai, has quit the field, Graphia said. After grinning, Hinata turned to face her 2 teammates. Alongside Haku, her struggle with the 2 cat ladies was becoming monotonous early on. She made her own ice knuckles, which are essentially indestructible brass knuckles. However, the 2 catgirl twins were quick. She therefore transformed the field into an icy tundra to account for her disadvantage. This gave her a big advantage and made the twins slow down. In fact, she had frozen one of the girls' feet to the ground, but before an ice spear could skewer her, her sister punched her ice, breaking it, and leapt away growling. You 2 are getting annoying, Haku said. Then maybe you should just give up, the red-haired catgirl said. Haku answered, not until you 2 are buried 6 feet deep in ice, and then he sighed, I can't believe I'll have to resort to this to defeat you both. The twins were ensnared in a cage of ice as Haku's hands shot out toward them and dozens of ice mirrors started to appear all around them. Then she started to melt into the ice mirror after touching it. Before they knew it, Haku was reflected in every mirror in their immediate vicinity. "This is a skill my beloved master helped me develop during our training," Haku said. "These are my demonic ice mirrors. Neither of you stands a chance of escaping these mirrors. Surrender or I will defeat you." The twins clenched their fists. They remarked, "As if we'll surrender to someone like you or your master," before attempting to break the ice with their flaming fists. To their surprise, the mirrors appeared to be unaffected by the heat and felt as though they had punched an 8-foot thick steel wall. After saying, "Your flames are far too weak to hope to melt my ice mirrors," Haku produced a number of senbon needles in the form of ice. The twins were unaware of what had happened to them. Only that every part of their skin was punctured by ice needles. Haku's image reappeared in the mirrors in a matter of seconds. The two catgirls pulled out a few needles harshly, causing them to cry out in pain. "While I'm in these mirrors, you look like you're barely moving at all and my speed increases beyond that of a mid-class knight. If you're not careful removing those, you might end up crippling yourselves, if not killing yourselves," she said with an air of boredom. "As if," the blue-haired catgirl called as she extracted additional needles from her legs and arms. After splitting up, the two attempted to escape through one of the crevices but were stopped. While another Haku appeared before her sister and punched her in the stomach before using her ice knuckles to manipulate the ice and send 3 ice spikes through her body. The first Haku appeared in front of the other and punched her with her ice knuckles, sending her sprawling toward the center of the mirrors before collapsing to the ground. The girl spat up some blood. She was surrounded by a white light that eventually vanished along with her. Graphia's voice called, "Ni, Lord Riser Fenix's pawn, has been taken off the field." "Ni," the blue-haired catgirl yelled as she stumbled to her feet. You bitch, you killed my sister." Haku said monotonously, "Don't blame me, I wasn't the one who started this." Before she realized what was happening, Haku had pierced her heart with a spike of ice, and before the second catgirl vanished, another light surrounded her. "You fucking bitch," she yelled as she charged Haku mindlessly in her rage. "Lord Riser Fenix's pawn, Lee, has been removed from the field," said Graphia. After letting go of her demon ice mirrors, Haku sighed and fell to the ground. Hinata approached her and put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm just tired," Haku said. Nodding and grinning at the queen. "It takes a lot of magic to use my demonic ice mirrors. I simply have to get better before our next altercation." Hinata said, "I understand," before examining Haku's attire, "and I'm so happy you didn't get blood on your uniform, Haku-chan. A maid of the Uzumaki clan must always look her best even when she fights for her master," Haku said, blushing before turning away. Hinata teased, "And I see Graphia-sama taught you more than she taught us," which made the girls redder. Haku said, "Let's see how Katesa's battle is coming along," in an attempt to divert Hinata's attention long enough for the hoaxes to end. When the two turned around, they saw Katase surrounded by Riser's 2 knights, holding her katana, Juchi Yosamu, in her hands and radiating its dark aura. During their training, Katase had learned that her sword, the one she had obtained to protect Naruto during their attack on the abandoned church, was actually possessed by the evil spirit of the man who forged it, Muramasa. It was a truly demonic sword, comparable to some of the most holy swords, like Kusanagi no Tsurugi, and that she needed to defeat the spirit within in order to wield it properly. Of course, she was unable to do so, but she gained its grudging respect for her sword skills and was permitted to work with him as long as she improved as a swordswoman. Now she and the spirit were in their unity form, where their senses, strength, and speed multiplied exponentially and their minds would synchronize with each other. Muramasa was adamantly opposed to the idea of combining their spirits with their wielders after learning that his old master, Masamune, had the spirit of Murayama's sword. However, when Murayama and Masamune entered their union state and engaged in combat with Katase and Muramasa simply cooperating, they were easily defeated naturally. Muramasa stated that they would also practice their unity form until they were stronger than Murayama and Masamune. Her eyes were closed as she concentrated on her opponent's movements. The woman with the two-hander's footsteps were much louder than her armored foe with the longsword, but the armor made enough noise that the longsword wielder could be easily followed at the moment. Their unity form made Katase more sadistic than she usually is, unless Issei or the perverted trio were snooping on them in the dressing rooms again, in which case she would become just as sadistic as usual. The armored knight decided to make her move and went for a slash across Katase's stomach, but the blazing blade was parried, and she received a slash across her arm. In return, the two knights circled Katase, who had barely moved more than a foot to either side when she dodged or parried the blows. The one with the Zweihander stopped and charged toward her to deliver an overhead blow, but it was easily avoided, and a slash across her back was her gift in return. The two Knights of Riser Phoenix looked at each other, nodded, and then started running toward Katace. The Zweihander attempted another overhead slash, but Katace blocked it, and the other knight rushed over to try to cripple the Uzumaki knight. Katace raised her legs, barely avoiding the crippling blow, only to slide her sword against the Zweihander, continuing the momentum of the downward slash and unintentionally carving into her fellow knight's shoulder, through the armor, and fairly deeply into her arm. Katace laughed wickedly. "Is this the best a knight of Phoenix is capable of?" she said darkly. "If it is, then I truly pity you for serving such a pathetic master." The two-handeder quickly withdrew her sword from her comrade's shoulder as the longsword wielder cried out in pain. The Zweihander's wielder yelled, "Don't you dare speak about our master like that," while attempting to assist her comrade by dressing the wound during combat. "My master gives me strength and my will to protect him is far greater than you could possibly imagine," Katace said composedly. "I will speak of him however I wish because I truly do pity you. He motivates me to keep getting stronger because of the faith he gives me. My will is unwavering and unstoppable in actuality. You can never hope to defeat me unless you possess the same faith, inspiration, and will as me." A familiar voice called out, "Katace-chan," and she turned to see a pinkette with a green gem on the back of her hand and a red gauntlet on her arm. "Ah," called Katace, "so the brawler with the pink hair has finally arrived. Your girlfriend is where?" "It's so nice to see you again, bastard swordsmith," Sakura growled, standing motionless and squinting her eyes. "Just so you know, Ino-chan was defeated, but all four of our opponents were defeated as well. You appear to be experiencing some difficulties. Do you need assistance?" "Go to hell," exclaimed the united Katace. Sakura retorted, "We're devils. Ya know we live in hell. That's the same thing even though we reside in the underworld." Unified Katace yelled, "I don't need your help dealing with these two, you lesbian cunt. These are my opponents, and I will deal with them as I see fit." For a brief moment, Katace fought against the unification and looked at Sakura apologetically. "Sorry, Sakura-chan." It was Muramasa who spoke. Sakura grinned back. "I know," she said. "I'm having trouble with that sexist bastard swordsmith." "No, Katace-chan. Not you. I am certain that you would never say such a thing to me. I swear to whatever deity you believe in, Katace, if you try to overpower me again, I will kill you." The two quickly reunited. "Then don't be such an asshole to my friends, Muramasa," Katace yelled in her mind. "Remember that you are in my body and that if you threaten my friends, Naruto and Masamune will make a sheath to keep you out." Very well," Masamune remarked. "I hate to say it, but Uzumaki is pretty good at sealing arrays and strong in the first place. The only master who might be able to help you reach your greatest potential is you." Sakura moaned. "Will you finish them off? Naruto-kun still needs our assistance to defeat that jerk. Riser, as much as I hate to say it, I would much rather talk to you for the next 9 days than spend more than 5 minutes with that Phoenix bastard." The unified spirit snarled, "You are right in that assessment based only on Katace's recollections of him. I would prefer to work with Masamune than fight alongside him. Just take a look at his knights for an example. They are utterly pitiful and unworthy of the title knight. We're still capable of fighting, you know," the longsword wielder called as she attempted to lift her weapon ahead of her. "Hardly," said Katace. "I suppose I should show you both some mercy before the lesbian brawler decides to do it for me." A few feet behind them, Katace reappeared with her sword held out to the side, having vanished in an instant. The two knights' bodies glowed and vanished as the Zweihander and longsword broke into pieces and they fell to the ground with cut throats. "Lord Riser Phoenix's knights, Carlamine and Cyrus, have been removed from the field," said Graphia. Tamari called out on behalf of Naruto, "Congratulations on defeating your opponents. Girls, continue on to the main school building and wait for us there. Naruto-sama, Karen, and Kuno are en route to aid in the defeat of Riser's queen. When they're finished there, you'll get together with the others to launch your assault on Riser and put an end to this raiding game." Hinata answered, "Understood, Tamari-chan, we're on our way now." Having said that, the team now called Team Oniya finally made the decision to head to the main school building. The third team, while Murayama was fighting the last of Riser's pawns, Hanabi and Yugito were having a hard time defeating Yubaluna. Despite her speed and reach advantages, the pawn was actually keeping up with her and, unlike Murayama, she was avoiding nearly all of her deadly blows. However, the queen's inherent speed made it nearly impossible to land a solid blow, and Yugito was sending wave after wave of ghostly hellfire toward the queen. But they were also easily avoided. Yubaluna was actually yawning as Hanabi attempted to use the speed boost she'd received from training to either close Yubaluna's magical pathways or do some damage to her internal organs, muscles. "I'm getting bored of playing with a couple of your master's pawns," Yubaluna said while yawning. "I'll just finish you both off and go after the rest of your peerage." Yubaluna was about to snap her fingers when a huge symbol materialized in front of Hanabi and Yugito. Then, a huge explosion engulfed the two pawns, and after the smoke and flames had subsided, Hanabi and Yugito, who had attempted to protect themselves with their arms, were confronted by Naruto, Karen, and Kuno. Naruto smiled warmly and said, "Hello, girls," and Yugito and Hanabi smiled back. "Are you ready, Yugito-chan?" "Always, Naruto-kun," she replied shortly after. Yugito's body started to emit a powerful aura, and a second tail emerged from her posterior. Naruto's power to subjugate hatred had enveloped Yugito's body, but this time it was very different from when he was attempting to subjugate her hatred when she joined his peerage. His power was merely concentrating on lessening the world's accumulated animosity while enabling her to maintain the boost in power, rather than totally prohibiting her from using senjutsu. When Yubaluna called forth her hellfire to coat her hands, she was taken aback to see that the flames were black as night rather than their typical blue. Yugito, who had been practicing senjutsu for 10 days, was growing accustomed to feeling it flow through her body once more. "This feels so good," announced Yugito. Yubaluna yelled, "You're not going to get the chance to touch me," and set off another explosion directed at Yugito as the flames engulfed Matabi's daughter. Yubaluna felt a smirk come to her face and said, "Blew her away." Yubaluna's eyes widened in fear as a familiar voice asked, "Blew who away?" But before she could turn around, her body was struck in the middle of her spine, sending it flying into the debris of the destroyed Kendo Club building, and she let out a cry of pain as her body struck the debris. Yugito was hovering in the air, her black devil wings reaching their full length, which seemed to be twice her body length. Yugito yelled, "Get up, bitch," to the queen. "I thought you were going to dazzle us." "Gra!" exclaimed Yubaluna as she unleashed explosion after explosion. Yugito's increased speed from senjutsu and her training with Naruto and her friends allowed her to easily avoid the explosions and fly closer to Yubaluna before rocking her with a right hook to her jaw and sending her flying once more. Yugito yelled, "This is for my friends," and then he punched the queen in the stomach, causing her to lose consciousness. "This is for my master." She delivered a knee to the queen's face, breaking her nose before grabbing her by the collar and flying higher than most would dare to try. "This is for Rias." She sent Yubaluna crashing head first into the ground with a powerful swing, and the entire arena, including the stands where the audience was watching, shook with a tremendous earthquake. "Lord Riser Phoenix's queen, Yubaluna, had been removed from the field," said Graphia. With the last of the senjutsu chakra gone from her system and Naruto's power back in his possession, she collapsed to her knees as Yugito glided to the floor, gazing up into his eyes as he grinned down at her and said, "You did wonderfully, Yugito-chan." Yugito nodded. Using so much senjutsu chakra had been exhausting for her, and she was determined to master senjutsu without Naruto's presence, so she knew that she and Naruto would be training much more frequently. "Thanks, Naruto-kun," she said, gulping up air greedily. After Yubaluna crashed into the arena, the earthquake caused both Murayama and Riser's last pawn to fall, but Murayama quickly got up while the pawn watched in shock. Aside from Riser himself, Yubaluna was the strongest member of Riser's peerage, so if she was so easily taken care of. She never noticed Murayama's sword colliding with her skull because she was too preoccupied with her own thoughts. Graphia declared, "Lord Riser Phoenix's pawn, Sharia, has been removed from the field." The game was nearly over, and the only person left was Riser Phoenix himself, while Hanabi, Murayama, Kuno, Karen, and Yugito were all celebrating together. Hinata Hyuga, the queen of Lord Naruto Uzumaki, was taken off the field. Katase, the knight of Lord Naruto Uzumaki, was taken off the field. Haku Sitri, the pawn of Lord Naruto Uzumaki, was taken off the field. Graphia declared, "Lord Naruto Uzumaki's rook, Sakura Haruno, was removed from the field, ending the festivities." A huge pyre rose by the main school building, and Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to face it. Hanabi yelled, "Hinata ne-chan, Katase-chan." Naruto yelled, "Let's go, girls," drawing the attention of his peers. "We still need to defeat Riser before we can celebrate anything." The other members of his peerage nodded, and they all headed for the enormous pyre that was still burning. When they got there, they saw Riser smirking arrogantly at Naruto before letting the pyre burn down. "Unfortunately, none of you have a chance to win. You and your peerage have done remarkably well, Uzumaki," he said haughtily. "It won't be long until I see Rias wearing her wedding gown before I remove it." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "My friends fought and beat your peerage to make sure Rias won't have to marry someone as arrogant as you. I'm not about to let their sacrifice be in vain. If you think you stand a chance against me, you are sadly mistaken," Riser said. "I'm a member of the Phoenix clan. I'm immortal no matter what you do. Nothing will change the fact that I'll just regenerate after you've done any damage. In short, Nothing you can do will be able to keep me down. Before I can retaliate, I'll enjoy incinerating your peerage before watching you burn alive, as well as Ria's hopes of getting out of this marriage. It's for the betterment of our race. No, Riser, said Naruto. It's for the betterment of your ego. You have no plans on seeing Rias as anything more than a trophy. She's little more than a concubine or a slave to sat your lustful desires upon. Like you're any different, yelled Riser. Admit it. The only reason you want to marry Rias is for her power of destruction and to revive your dead low-class clan of losers just like the rest of your peerage. Naruto yelled, that's where you're wrong, as his normally blue eyes flashed crimson and his anger showed. Rias is more to me than that. I've grown up with Rias. I've watched her fight and struggle to escape the shadow of her brother. She's not just Rias Gremory of the Gremory clan or the bearer of the power of destruction. She has grown into a beautiful, strong, independent woman who has her own dreams to accomplish and won't let anything or anyone stand in her way. Everyone in my peerage and her peerage who has gotten to know her would sacrifice themselves to make Rias happy. And I won't allow someone I love to end up with an asshole like you. Even the audience fell silent as the arena fell silent. In the stands up there as they took in Naruto's words, Rias and her peers were as quiet as the dead in reality. The four great Saiyans were observing Rias to gauge her response to Naruto's admission. Deeper in her chest, Rias could feel her heart beating. If she were to be honest with herself, she had been waiting a long time to hear those words from him, and now that she had. She is extremely happy. She spent a long time loving Naruto. A tiny part of her knew even as a child that he was the one she would spend the rest of their lives with. As Kurama, the nine-tailed fox lord's container, he carried a heavy load. He nevertheless made an effort to please his friends and those around him in spite of that burden. Although many devils didn't take his power seriously, it was a good fit for his personality. Taking on the weight and stigma of others was something he voluntarily did. His body was capable of withstanding any physical or psychological punishment. To put it briefly, he was the ideal match for her. If she dared to say those words out loud, it would be a match made in heaven. She made the decision to do something out of character as a result. She got to her feet, dashed to the railings, and used every breath she had to yell at Naruto. I love you, Naruto Uzumaki, so you better win or I'll never forgive you. The display and confession made the people around them smile as she witnessed her reveal her deepest emotions to her beloved. Akano appeared to be genuinely delighted for her king. Returning to the arena, Riser frowned as Naruto and his remaining peers all grinned after hearing Rias' confession. Naruto remarked, you hear that, Riser? With motivation like that, how can I stand to lose? I'm going to enjoy watching her spirit break when I beat you, Riser said. The climax of Karen's rage was reached when she hurled black lightning bolts at Riser, but he easily avoided the blasts by using his fiery wings with her katana drawn and in a defensive stance. Murayama stood before Naruto as she charged Riser. Hanabi tried to approach him by using her diminutive size, but he sidestepped her and blasted her with a huge ball of fire. Lord Naruto Uzumaki's pawn, Hanabi Hyuga, has been removed from the field. Naruto commanded, don't get close to Riser. Yugito-chan, start blasting Riser with your hellfire. Kuno-chan, stay behind me and Murayama. A massive burst of fire engulfed Yugito and Kuno as they turned to join Naruto, Karen, and Murayama. Although her clothing was fairly burned, Yugito was able to flee, exposing her nude torso to onlookers. Lord Naruto Uzumaki's rook, Kuno, has been removed from the field. Naruto's eyes slitted and flared crimson. He yelled, Kuno-chan, and turned to face Yugito. His blue eyes had returned, but she had never noticed the harshness in them before. Are you alright, Yugito-chan? I'm fine, she remarked, wiping away a small amount of ash. If I were anyone else, that might have removed me from the game too. Thankfully, I'm Matabi's daughter and I'm inherently resistant to fire magic and flames in general. To a certain degree, I won't be completely immune to fire until I get a lot stronger and master senjutsu like Mom has. As strategies flooded his mind, Naruto's eyes appeared to move everywhere. He took hold of Murayama's and Yugito's shoulders. Rune. Speed. Rune. Barrier. Rune. Armor. On Yugito's bare skin and on Murayama's arm, 3 runes emerged. Be careful and avoid as many of Riser's blasts as you can. This is for Ria's freedom and happiness. With a nod, the two took off at the speed of a high-class knight and a mid-class knight, respectively. Riser barely escaped a fist of glowing blue hellfire before Murayama's sword severed his left arm at the shoulder. His arm reappeared in a flash of flame after he flew backwards. He threw a burst of fire at Murayama, but she cut it in half with a swipe of her blade and proceeded to cut off his right leg at the knee while Yugito struck his jaw with a strong uppercut. After being confused by the series of strikes, he was struck by a flash of black lightning that was darker than the wings of any fallen angel. As the intensity of the electricity grew, he let out a painful scream. Karen's anger and rage were intensifying her magic as she glared at Riser. She would never be able to wed Naruto, the love of her life and the one who saved her from certain death, because of Riser. He was to blame. She wanted to be his wife, even though she and Rias had resolved their disagreements about Naruto's heart and their own feelings for him, the woman he wed before anyone else. The girls of his peerage had a tacit understanding that they would share him with each other regardless of who married him first. They knew he had feelings for her, but they didn't anticipate her getting married before him, and Rias wasn't involved. However, they would now have to talk to Rias about how they would share him with each other and make plans for the other girls to confess their feelings for him. In addition, there was a high probability that other women would steal Naruto's remaining pieces and fall in love with him afterwards. Talking about it would be so damned difficult. In the stands up there under Karen's agonizing black lightning, Riser was letting out screams that made Akano, who was watching the match with Rias, feel orgasmic. Since the challenge was issued, she frequently pondered what it would be like to be the one to make Riser scream in that way. She was jealous of Karen. At the moment her face turned red, her M side was responding to Karen's treatment, while her S side was responding to Riser's cries. One day, perhaps, they could try things out on each other. She wouldn't mind at all. She gave a sensual lip lick, making Rias and Issei take a step back. I'm going to have a serious talk with Karen-chan soon, she said. In the arena, Karen didn't notice Riser's hands burning as she kept electrocuting her until a flame erupted in her direction. Rune. Shield. Karen was shielded from the flames by a huge wall of runes that materialized in front of her. The arm Riser had just used to attack her teammate was severed by Murayama. Naruto did notice something as he kept watching Riser. The first time Murayama had severed Riser's arm, it had grown back almost immediately, but it was regenerating slowly when it was severed while Karen was slashing out at him with her lightning attack. He put a soft hand on her shoulder and said, "That's enough, Karenheim," which stopped her lightning. Naruto saw that Riser was breathing heavily and that his arm was still regenerating far more slowly than normal as he collapsed to the ground. "I'm going to give you one chance to surrender. I will give you until the count of 3 to kneel before me and declare me the winner to everyone watching," said Naruto. "You expect me to bow down to some low-class trash?" Riser spit out. The flames on his arms began to hasten the regeneration. 1. It wasn't long before his arm was back to normal and flames coated his arms. "I'll never kneel before someone like you." 2. "I'll burn you so badly, nobody will recognize you," he said as he launched a powerful blaze toward Naruto. 3. The flames hit their target and kept burning at the ground. As soon as he said the word 3, the soil beneath their feet became black. Murayama, Yugito, and Karen all resisted the impulse to rush over and see how their master was doing. That is until the flames died down and Riser started laughing like a maniac. "I did it, I've won." "I don't think so," called Naruto's voice from the pillar of smoke. Within seconds, a gust of wind swept away the smoke, revealing Naruto with crimson-slitted eyes and an aura of violet surrounding his body. "Maybe now would be a good time to reintroduce myself. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot-blooded habanero, and Minato Namikaze, the fastest knight in Yellow Flash, wielder of the power to subjugate hatred, and container of Kurama, the 9-tailed fox lord, strongest of the tailed demon lords, husband of Yusaka, the leader of Kyoto's Yukai, and father of Kuno, my precious rook. With this power, I shall free Rias from the chains of your contract and protect her with every ounce of strength I can muster. That is my dream and we're about to see it finally brought to light." In an instant, he disappeared from sight and Riser's body just lurched forward on its own with his fist buried in Riser's stomach. Naruto appeared to reappear in that moment with a kick to his face. Riser flew higher than anyone thought was possible with a single kick from anyone other than a rook. Naruto landed on the ground and swung a violet claw. Everyone watched as it latched onto Riser before it came crashing down into the main school building. As the building collapsed on top of the glowing violet arm and Riser, Naruto had withdrawn the arm before watching as flames flew out of the rubble and into the air where it reformed as Riser Phoenix. Naruto looked on with a neutral glance while Riser seemed to grow more furious with each passing moment. "I refuse to lose to someone like you," Riser shouted as he unleashed a fireball toward him with epic proportions. Naruto took a deep breath before unleashing a hellish roar that seemed to destroy the fireball between them. Naruto opened his wings and took off like a missile toward Riser, grabbing him by his face and crashing to the ground, dragging him head first through the ground before throwing him toward the destroyed remnants of the Kendo Club. As Naruto walked over to Riser, he jammed his foot deep into Riser's spine until he could hear it crack beneath his foot. Try as hard as he might, Riser's mouth opened, but no sound escaped. "I've won," Naruto said to Riser, who just fell unconscious from the incredible pain that ran through his body. "You may be immortal, but your bodies are just as fragile as any other devils as long as you feel pain. But there are no physical wounds, your regeneration is meaningless and anyone will be capable of beating you. Riser's body glowed white before disappearing from the field. Lord Riser Phoenix has been removed from the field. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is the victor and his contract with Rias Gremory will be acknowledged over the contract between Riser Phoenix and Rias Gremory, Grafia announced. Karen ran over to Naruto with Yugito and Murayama, all three girls tackling him in a group hug as they celebrated a hard-fought victory against seemingly overwhelming numbers in a more experienced group. When Rias Gremory and her peers arrived at the arena, which had reverted to its original concrete floor and blank state, all festivities came to an end. The buildings had since disappeared from sight. Rias' peerage were smiling, as were the rest of Naruto's. Rias ran over to Naruto and wrapped her arms around his waist, something he mirrored with earnest. "I knew you could beat him," she said with tears in her eyes. "I believed in you and you won." He grinned, then met her blue eyes with tears. He cupped her jaw in his hand and said, "I meant it, you know, when I said I would do anything it takes to see you smile, I meant it." With those final words, they shared their first kiss with one another. All they knew was that, with that one kiss, they had finally communicated their feelings for one another. It was the most wonderful feeling they had ever experienced, and nothing could ever take that moment away from them. It was a grand morning. Rias had already started moving many of her belongings from the Gremory clan's mansion into the Uzumaki clan mansion. A week after Naruto had defeated Riser for Rias' hand in marriage, numerous devil clans were invited to participate in the grand feast that took place today. Prior to the wedding, some of the guests, of course, had their own concerns. "This is Outrageous. We demand the Gremory clan take actions against this mockery." They were, of course, discussing the events leading up to Riser Phoenix's defeat at the hands of Naruto Uzumaki and the contentious application of Kurama's, the nine-tailed fox lord's, power against his otherwise invincible opponent. In the center of a sizable group of irate nobles attempting to protest the rating game's result was Sears Lucifer. "Gentlemen, I assure you that nothing in that match was illegal," Sears said, trying to appease the irate nobles in front of him. "According to the rules, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze had defeated Riser Phoenix and has won my sister's hand in marriage fair and square." One of the nobles yelled, "How can you say that after he used the power of a demon lord? He did not choose to have that power inside of him," Sears said. "As a matter of fact, would there be any protest if its power were sealed within young Riser and he used it against an opponent in a rating game? I'm very curious." Another noble yelled, "That has nothing to do with the fact that the boy actively used its power." Grafia called out to the group, "On the contrary, I believe that Lucifer-sama has a point," as she and Lady Gremory walked up. "Would you prevent Lady Rias, Lucifer-sama, or Lady Gremory from using the power of destruction in their rating games? By preventing Lord Naruto from accessing the power he has sealed within him, you would also tell those and others with powers such as the power of destruction to not use their gifts against their opponents during rating games. Would you also not allow any member of the peerage of the Phoenix clan from carrying a bottle of Phoenix tears into a rating game or from using their power over fire and wind or their immortality?" "Of course not," exclaimed a different noble. "Then why not allow Naruto access to the power his parents died to seal within him?" asked Lady Gremory. "Unless, of course, this is simply because it's Naruto that you have a problem with." The voice from behind said, "Why should it be any different, Venelana Okawa-sama?" When Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze entered with his arm around Rias' waist, the nobles turned around. "After all, I am the last of my family. Maybe they think I should never have been allowed an evil piece set and my family reduced to low-class standings simply because my parents passed on protecting Lilith from Kurama's rage. If you nobles want to be honest, I'll be honest with you. Without me being born, Kurama would have burned Lilith to the ground and the devils would have gone extinct. It's the power that lies within my blood that prevents him from escaping. It is my power that keeps Lilith safe." The nobility soon fell silent. "I did what any devil is allowed to do in a rating game. One used the power available to me and defeated my opponent. If you have a problem with that, then challenge me to a rating game and I will gladly do the same again and again until I get my point through your thick skulls. And the Gremory clan will support the Uzumaki clan against such claims," said Rias, "as will I as his wife." When Sears said, "And as his godparents, Grafia and I will not just stand by as he is being accused of doing the same thing Riser and other devils have done before him," the nobles left the celebration before anyone could challenge them to a rating game for demeaning the high-class clan heir and accusing them of cheating. Drawing Rias nearer to him, Naruto kissed her on the lips. "Thank you for supporting me, Rias-heim." With a smile, Rias met his eyes. "I can think of another way you could thank me, Naruto-koi." He hummed, "I think you can wait for the honeymoon before we can think of doing anything like that." She flirtatiously said, "Don't keep me waiting too long, Naruto Koi," before approaching Sona and striking up a conversation with her peers and other guests. Saying, "You sure seem happy today, Naruto." Sears grinned. Naruto smiled and gave it back. He looked longingly at Rias and said, "I've been dreaming of this day for so long," with a wistful smile. With his eyes closed, Sears said, "You know, you can call me Oni-sama if you want," prepared to enjoy the sensation of being referred to as Big Brother by his sister's husband. Grafia said. Naruto-sama left shortly after finishing his statement, Lucifer-sama, which made Sears search for Naruto so he could finally address him as Big Brother. Also, he told me to tell you that he'll never call you Oni-sama and will continue to call you Ojii-sama or Jii-sama. A cloud of rain appeared over his head, and Sears found himself crouched in the corner. He said, "I get no respect from my godson or my cute baby sister," before Grafia grabbed him by the ear. "You shouldn't act like that when Rias-sama is about to get married to Naruto-sama, Lucifer-sama," she said. In the meantime, Revel Phoenix, who was preoccupied with the frill of her pink dress and gazing at the ground, Lord Gremory, and Lord and Lady Phoenix had approached Naruto. "Hello, Naruto-kun," King Gremory said. "It's good to see both you and Rias in such high spirits." Naruto said, "It's a pleasure to see you also, Lord Gremory," before turning to face Lord and Lady Phoenix. "It's good to see you both as well, Lord and Lady Phoenix." Lady Phoenix said, "Yes, Naruto-kun, it is. I'm happy for both you and Rias-chan. It isn't often that someone like you takes a stand for something they believe in." "What was Riser's condition?" inquired Naruto. "He's been a poor sport about it, but I think it's about time he doesn't have everything handed to him like he has been," said Lady Phoenix. "He'll get over it eventually and, hopefully, he'll learn a thing or two and become a better person for it." "Yes," said Lord Phoenix, grinning merrily. "Even we can make mistakes when it comes to things like this. Sometimes it takes a young man like yourself to make us see the error of our ways. After all, even we're prone to greed." Lord Gremory gave his old friend a back pat while laughing. "Too true. My friend, too true. I'm just happy that Rias is finally happy." "So am I, Lord Gremory," Naruto retorted. Lady Phoenix said, "By the way, I was wondering if you were interested in a trade," drawing Naruto's attention. "You see, Revel traded herself to me a few days ago and asked me if she could trade places with one of your unused bishops. Do you think you'd be interested?" Naruto glanced down at Revel, who was still fiddling with her dress while blushing profusely. He bent over and used his hand to raise her head, gazing intently into her vivid blue eyes. "Would you like to join my peerage, Revel-chan?" said he. She gave an angry nod. "Of course, Naruto-sama," she responded. "I saw how strong you and your peerage was, and I know that if I joined your peerage, I can become stronger too." Grinning, Naruto took out his unused bishop. "Then let's trade, Lady Phoenix," he said in response. "Revel Phoenix, as per the contract we have agreed upon, you will be my servant until such a time as we both feel the terms of the contract have been fulfilled. Do you agree to these conditions?" "I agree to the terms and conditions we have set in the contract," replied Revel. "Please treat me well. I will serve you until the terms of the contract are fulfilled." "Excellent, then you are accepted as my bishop by me." Naruto Uzumaki, a crimson bishop piece, departed from her back and floated into Lady Phoenix's waiting hand, while Revel's body glowed and she felt a warmth flow through her chest and into every part of her body. "Follow me and may happiness always fill your heart for the rest of your days," he said as the bishop piece melted and glowed into Revel's chest. Naruto removed his tuxedo jacket and handed it to Revel, who took it and wrapped herself up as quickly as she could, surprising the group by hearing the tearing of fabric coming from her and seeing her bust expand a fair margin, tearing through her violet corset and forcing her to cover herself. Lord Gremory questioned, "What was that all about?" as Lord and Lady Phoenix stared at their daughter in shock. "All of the mutated pieces I got in my evil piece set have the strange side effect of doing something like that," Naruto said, sighing and shaking his head. "I'm not sure why, but Sakura-chan and Yugito-chan experienced it. Given that Revel has my mutated bishop, my final mutated pieces are 2 pawns." As Revel started to discreetly examine herself under the protection and discretion of Naruto's jacket, Lady Phoenix laughed to herself and said, "I wonder what would happen if you ever used one on a male." Lord Phoenix turned to his wife and said, "Don't ever say something like that again," with a shake in his voice, after the 3 men had gone pale and shaken the thought from their minds. "Well, I believe I'll take Revel to get her dress stitched up and altered to suit her new shape," said Lady Phoenix. "We should be back within a few moments before the festivities begin." Naruto grinned and nodded. "I look forward to introducing you to the other members of my peerage that you haven't met yet, and I'm sure Rias and her peerage would love to get to know my newest bishop also, since we'll be working closely with them." After assessing her larger bust and considering that Naruto had witnessed her bare breasts in such a public setting with other people present, Revel said, "Of course, Naruto-sama," her blush still shining brightly. He said, "You don't have to call me Naruto-sama, Revelheim. I'd rather be called Naruto or Naruto-kun. I personally prefer Naruto-kun or Naruto, but you can call me Master if you have to address me formally." "Of course, Master," she curtsied. "After Mama and I have finished mending my dress, I'll be back at your side." Naruto let out a groan as the two Phoenix women departed, saying, "I knew I shouldn't have mentioned that master thing." To himself, "It's bad enough that most of my peerage does it. I was hoping Revel would be different." After a brief moment of laughter at Naruto's expense, the two friends, Lords Gremory and Phoenix, said their goodbyes and went to join their respective families. Sona and Rias had made the decision to approach him as they were leaving, with Rias grinning broadly and Sona appearing to control her emotions. Sona said bluntly, "Congratulations, Uzumaki, on defeating Riser in your rating game. One must admit that I was taken aback. What power did you employ to defeat Riser?" "I called up a few friends during the 10 days Riser gave us to train. Goku-sama and Roshi, his son. I wanted to know how to use Kurama's chakra safely so that I wouldn't be impacted by his anger if I ever needed to. Even just getting in touch with him took a while, but we were able to reach a consensus. He still has a lot of Senjutsu chakra flowing through him, which may be the main reason he is still so furious about the current circumstance, but he still cares about his daughter Kunu's welfare. Since his wife, Yasaka-sama, trusted me with Kunu's protection, he said he would let me use his yokai if I vowed to keep Kuno safe and strengthen her. I had at least mastered his chakra cloak before the 10th day ended without giving in to his fury, but I can only remain in his one-tailed form for an hour before his fury begins to affect me. I become nothing more than a mindless beast acting on instinct once I transform into his two-tailed form." "That's an incredible amount of progress," Sona said with admiration, "since it's unheard of for a devil to be able to use chakra without having originally been born a yokai. Such a feat is incredibly impressive." "Thanks for the compliment, but I still have a lot of work left before he'll even consider teaching me his style of senjutsu in addition to the typical kitsune's foxfire," Naruto said, nodding. His trust has begun to grow, and that's as good a start as anything I could have hoped for. With a nod of agreement, Rias said, "Anyway, what happened with Revel earlier, which made Naruto moan?" He began, "Unfortunately, the bishop I gave her was a mutated piece. She traded herself to Lady Phoenix and asked her to trade places with my bishop." When Rias and Sona heard that, their eyes widened. "Do you remember what I told you happened to Sakura-chan and Yugito-chan when they received their mutated pieces?" For a brief moment, Rias's eyes appeared somewhat unfocused before widening once more. "It didn't." Naruto nodded grudgingly. "It did, so I gave her my jacket until she and Lady Phoenix returned from getting her dress mended and altered for her new figure. So all you have left are 4 more pawns until you have a full set," Rias explained. Naruto gave a nod. "Congratulations, Naruto-koi. I can't wait to see who else you'll recruit." Naruto acknowledged. "Well, 2 of my last 4 pawns are mutated pieces," and Rias mutely hoped that they didn't have the same effect on his breasts that his other mutated pieces appeared to have. Hanabi had the smallest breasts, giving her a Lolita figure, while the majority of Naruto's peerage had C-cup to Karen's ridiculous DD-cup breasts. Had it not been for the mutated bishop, she probably would have been placed alongside Revel in the Lolita category. "Regardless, I'm glad that Revel got such a good king," Rias said. "Of course, anyone would likely be a better king for her than Riser." "So when are you planning your power play on the 72 pillars, Uzumaki?" Sona smirked and inquired. "I mean, you're marrying Rias. You have my sister, Revel Phoenix, the daughters of 2 powerful tailed demon lords, and the heiress and sister of a mid-class devil family in your peerage. How many more high-profile people are you planning on adding to your peerage?" Naruto joked, "I'm impressed, So-tan. For a moment, I actually believed you wouldn't make a sarcastic remark toward me until Rias and I came back from our honeymoon." After squinting at Naruto, Sona took an envelope out of her pocket and threw it in his direction. He caught it and arched an eyebrow. Sona stated sternly, "It's from Seraphal. She said you asked her for something the day after you beat Riser. A wedding present, I guess." With a smile on his face, Naruto opened the envelope covertly as his eyes grew wide dreamily. "She came through with it," he said. "I'll be sure to thank Leviathan the next time I see her. Thanks, So-tan." Sona was about to throw the water sphere she was holding at him, but she decided against it and let it fall harmlessly into the air. Instead she turned to return to her family. After shaking her head, Sona remarked, "Good luck putting up with him, Rias. Mao knows that I wouldn't be able to." Rias let out a sigh. She said, "I wish the 2 of you could just get along for a change." To Naruto, "I mean, you're friends with Hiku-chan and Leviathan-sama. Why is it so difficult to be friends with Sona?" Because she's so strict, Naruto countered. If she were just a little bit more easygoing and relaxed, we could be friends instead. She takes it upon herself to do everything to the point of overworking herself. She never spends a few moments to just have fun and take things easy. I understand what you're saying, Rias replied. Honestly, I do, but all you two do when you end up talking to one another is fighting or arguing with one another about some stupid little thing. For example, the strip poker game we had to see who would come to the familiar forest with me and my peerage. Naruto grinned and said, let's not talk about this anymore, Rias. This is supposed to be the happiest weekend of our lives. We're getting married tomorrow. With a joyful sigh, Rias put her arms around her husband's neck and pressed her body against his. And we're finally going to make our wildest dreams come true when we walk down the aisle tomorrow. Then she gave him a tender kiss, followed by our week-long honeymoon where we'll finally give our virginities to one another, he said. In her own words, I love you, Naruto Koi, Naruto said. I love you too, my beloved Riasheim, and led her to the head table, where their peerages were seated. Naruto's peerage was seated on his left, and Rias was seated on her right. They were seated next to their queens, followed by their bishops, knights, and rooks. Their pawns were at the very end of the table. Lady Phoenix and Revel arrived shortly after they took their proper seats, and after Naruto had informed his peers that she was his newest bishop, Revel took a seat between Karen and Murayama. Sakura, Ino, Katase, Murayama, and Karen were a little more tired of embracing her so rapidly, but Hinata, Haku, Yugito, and Kuno seemed to accept her into the group with relative ease, particularly in light of her brother's attempt. Lord and Lady Gremory were seated at a table designated for the bride and groom's family, although it was generally accepted that Circe X Lucifer and his wife, Graphia Lucifuge, had assisted in raising him since the passing of his birth parents. By the head table was a circular table with Circe X Lucifer, Seraphol Leviathan, Ajuka Beelzebub, and Falbium Asmodeus seated in their thrones. To get everyone's attention, Circe X got up and held up a glass, then tapped it with a fork. Attention, everyone, attention, he exclaimed, grinning at the sight of his loved ones and friends present. Both Yasaka and Matabi, in human form, were present as well. I'd like to propose a toast to the soon-to-be happily married couple, to Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Rias Gremory Uzumaki. The different devils and yokai in the room raised their glasses and exclaimed, "Here, here." Naruto got up at this point and grinned at everyone in attendance. The majority of the audience, including Naruto's peers, started to laugh when he said, "All of you have known either Rias or myself for many years. For those of you who have known me, I'd like to give you all this very belated apology for making your lives hell. For those of you who have known Rias, I'm sure you all have very happy memories. Jokes aside, I'm incredibly happy to see you all here today to join us before Rias and I become officially married, uniting our two clans just as our mothers had always dreamed. However, this isn't just about uniting the Gremory clan and the Uzumaki clan. For the longest time, I've always been in love with Rias. To me, she was more than just the Gremory heiress. She was my best friend and someone I enjoyed spending time with. But those feelings didn't stop at friendship. After Rias left for the mortal realm, I was, admittedly, lost. Sure, I continued to train with my peerage and even made friends, but it felt like I was just going through the motions, like a part of me had disappeared and I had no idea what to do with myself. If not for Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan, Karenheim, Haku-chan, and Yugito-chan, I might have simply secluded myself from the world. So, last year, I decided to follow Rias, see the mortal realm for myself and make new friends. And in doing so, I had indeed made friends and even added them to my peerage, but a part of me still felt lost until I met Rias again. When I did, my heart felt whole again and that missing piece had come back to me. Rias had become more beautiful than I could ever imagine and she too had made friends for the longest time. I was happy just to see her and we'd rekindled our friendship, but I wanted more out of our relationship. I was so angry when I found out that she was engaged to Riser that I just wanted to find some way to help her, he said. When my bishop, Karen, had informed me that my mother, Kushina Uzumaki, had arranged for me to be married to Rias with Lady Gremory, I realized just what it was that I was missing and why I had been so lost for so long. I realized that I honestly loved Rias. She was the one who had stolen a piece of my heart and I never wanted her to give it back. So when Riser challenged me to a rating game, I knew that I had 10 days to get stronger so I could see her smile again. Those 10 days. All I could think about was keeping my promise to save her from marrying someone she never wanted to marry. I knew, at that point, that was all the motivation I and my peerage needed. Every member of my peerage had befriended Rias in some way, shape, or form and they knew what would happen if we lost. In that arena during our rating game, It wasn't our training alone that won us the game, it was our resolve to save Rias that pushed us to fight, and it was that resolve that brought us victory, he stated. And now, here we stand, our confessions heard by everyone in the arena, our love for one another unquestionable and undying. The bond between us has never been stronger, and I couldn't be happier. Sears X grinned at the two as he rose from his throne. He reached into his pocket, took out a black box, tossed it in his hand, and then walked over to Naruto, giving him the box. Once again, I congratulate you for your victory in the rating game, and I am happy that you and my dear sister are with the person you should be with. This is the last item that belonged to your parents. I was actually waiting for a day like this to give it to you. When Naruto opened the box, his heart skipped a beat and his jaw fell to the ground. He touched the object in the box tenderly, then turned to face Sears X, who nodded in agreement. Rias got to her feet, eager to see what her older brother had given Naruto. Naruto dropped to one knee as she stood up, turning the box toward Rias. He displayed a stunning diamond ring and said, "Rias Gremory, I know that we're going to get married tomorrow, but I'd like to make this official." Rias's body froze. "Rias Gremory, will you do me the honor of being my wife?" She exclaimed, "Yes," as he placed the ring on her finger. "Yes, I will." The whole room erupted in cheers as Naruto and Rias shared a passionate kiss. "To the happy couple," Sears X exclaimed, lifting his glass once more. With a collective, "To the happy couple," the rest of the room stood up. For the remainder of the evening, there was drinking, gifts from many of the devil clans present, pictures of Naruto and Rias, as well as some with their peerages included, and offers from members of the low-class and mid-class devil clans to join his peerage, which they graciously declined. By night's end, Naruto had arrived at the Uzumaki estates with Rias, her peerage, and his own. When comparing the Uzumaki clan's magnificent home to the Gremory clan's, even Issei was astounded by its size. "I didn't realize you had such a huge place to yourself, Naruto-senpai," Issei remarked, staring. Naruto gave a hearty laugh. Houses of this size are actually quite common among larger clans. Back when Mito Uzumaki, my grandmother, and Hashirama Senju, my grandfather, had married, the Uzumaki clan was easily 400 devils strong, consisting of reincarnated devils, half-blood devils, and pure blood devils. However, when Kurama, Kunoheim's father, was forcibly released from my mother's seal, every single one of my clansmen had died. Those who could use the power to subjugate hatred were using it to try and weaken him, to try and stop his rampage long enough for my father, the only available master of rune magic at the time, to prepare a strong enough rune to reseal him. Currently, Karen-chan and I are the only Uzumaki left, as far as we know, and I am the last known Uzumaki who bears the power to subjugate hatred. But that won't be the case anymore, Rias remarked. The Uzumaki clan will rise again, and the power to subjugate hatred will not end with you. After all, we still have orange-haired children to raise, right? Naruto gave a hearty laugh. He remarked, "That's right, Riasheim, we'll have as many orange-haired sons and daughters as you could possibly want." After the celebration, Haku, dressed as a French maid, asked, "Master, shall I show Rias' peerage to their rooms?" "Of course, Haku-chan," Naruto replied. Soon after, Rias remained behind while Haku escorted Issei, Kiba, Kaneko, Asia, and Akeno to their separate rooms. "Hinata-chan, would you mind escorting Ravelheim around the estate? Show her where everything is and where she'll be sleeping while she lives here. I'll send someone with her tomorrow to gather her belongings and bring them to her room after the wedding." Hinata gave a nod. She answered, "Of course, Naruto-kun," and then turned to face Ravel. "Come now, Ravel-chan, we have several rooms to see, and then we'll get you settled in a room of your own." With a nod, the youthful phoenix followed Hinata's example. Ravel looked down at her feet and said, "I greatly appreciate you doing this, Hinata-sama." "It's no problem at all, Ravel-chan," Hinata said, grinning warmly. "Our first stop will be the Uzumaki clan's training grounds located in the basement." Ravel seized the opportunity to survey their surroundings as they strolled. Compared to many high-class devils' homes, the Uzumaki clan estates were rather Spartan. "Why doesn't Master Naruto have any kind of decorations around the estate, Hinata-sama? Surely he could afford many artworks or high-end decorations if he wanted to, right?" Hinata gave a nod. He could buy things to decorate the estate with, but he wants others to feel at home here. With too many extravagant decorations, it would just be him flaunting his wealth, and visitors or newer members of his peerage would be put off by decorating it sparsely. It allows visitors and his peerage to feel at home. Ravel gave a sympathetic nod. "That's not to say you can't decorate your room elaborately. It's your room and only you have any say in how it's decorated," Hinata continued. Ravel and Hinata quickly made their way to the training room located in the Uzumaki clan estate's basement. This is the training room where Naruto's harem will be training while he and Rias are on their honeymoon. Revel exclaimed, "Ha harem," as her cheeks flushed scarlet. I was unaware that Naruto-sama's peerage was a harem. Hinata laughed. She said, "I apologize if I offended you, Revel-chan. The truth of the matter is that almost everyone who has joined Naruto-kun's peerage is in love with him with the exception of Kunohime, who Naruto-sama sees as a daughter. You see, as the last member of the Uzumaki clan and the last person capable of using the power to subjugate hatred, Naruto-sama is expected to have an heir or an heiress capable of using the Uzumaki clan's power even though Rihasheim-sama is about to marry him, becoming his true wife. She cannot hope to help him bring back the Uzumaki clan from the edge of extinction alone. As people who truly care for him and members of his peerage, it is our duty to help him revive the Uzumaki clan." With a smile, Hinata looked down at Revel. "I know you don't quite love Naruto-sama like we do. To tell you the truth, Sakura-chan and Ino-chan respect Naruto-sama much like you do. But they love one another in a similar way as I and the other members of his peerage love him, so don't worry about falling in love with Naruto-sama. You should mostly focus on getting stronger and helping Naruto-sama with his dream of helping bring the 72 pillars to where it once was and uniting devils of pure blood and half-blood." Revel's cheeks were always flushed. Her words, "I understand, Hinata-sama, thank you for explaining that to me. It's my job as Naruto-sama's queen to help my friends and newer members to integrate with one another and to take charge of his peerage when he's away." Hinata said. The Master Suite is located on the 8th floor and is currently only accessible by Naruto-sama and Rihasheim-sama. Let's continue our walkthrough of the Uzumaki estate with the 2nd floor where you'll be able to choose from one of the empty rooms as your own. After sending their peerages to find their rooms, Naruto and Rias decided to get ready for bed, and Rias went to the master bathroom to get ready while Naruto dressed in the bedroom, putting his tuxedo in the dirty clothes hamper before slipping into the bed naked, as something he'd somehow inherited from Rias, much like his otaku tendencies, which prevented him from feeling comfortable in bed wearing anything other than a basic pair of boxers. As Naruto was settling in, he heard the bathroom door open and turned to see his beloved Rias standing in the doorway, her bare breasts bouncing and her light pink nipples perfectly perched atop each one full mound, her long, flowing crimson hair falling like a curtain down her back all the way down to her hips, her body the ideal hourglass shape that attracted men from all over the world, with a firm yet luscious butt, wide child-birthing hips, and a tiny tuft of crimson hair dotted her vagina. This stunning vision was the ideal beauty in Naruto's eyes, and she was set to wed him tomorrow. "I'm so happy to see the kind of effect seeing me like this has on you, Naruto-kun," Rias said with a warm smile that made him look down at the tent in the thick comforter. He blushed but did not turn away. "To think that I'm about to marry a woman like you gets me like this," said Naruto. "Seeing you like this, it's hard for me to wait until our honeymoon to finally share our virginities with one another." As she strolled over to him, she slipped beneath the comforter and pressed herself against his back, feeling as though their bodies were made to fit. "I feel the same way, Naruto-koi," she replied, adding, "I've dreamed about this day for a very long time and at last, my dream has come true." As he massaged Ria's cheek, Naruto remarked, "Not just your dream, but also our dream and our mother's dreams. We have brought our families together as they had always desired. Knowing that I married a redhead like her would probably make mom happy. You make an excellent pillow, Naruto-kun," she whispered in his ear, making him close his eyes and shutting out everything but the feel of her body against his. Rias hummed to herself and giggled before tucking into his body and using him as a body pillow. The two friends who were married in the ceremonies of tomorrow had fallen asleep in a matter of seconds. The following morning, Naruto and Rias had inexplicably switched places during the night, with Naruto lying on his back and Rias's legs intertwined with his while her breasts wrapped around his arm. When the morning light came in through their window, Naruto attempted to stretch his arms, but he was only able to stretch his left arm over his head. He turned to find Rias sleeping soundly, and he really wanted to just go back to sleep with her, but they had other plans, and Rias was going to finally see the completed wedding dress. Rias had selected Akano as her maid of honor, though she had also considered Karen, and her request was accepted by Akano, Karen, Hinata, Kaneko, Asia, and Yugito. Naruto, on the other hand, was having a slightly harder time picking out his best man and his groomsman last night. Ruval Phoenix had accepted Naruto's request to be his best man, seeing as the two had been good friends for a long time. His groomsmen ended up being 6 in total as well: Ruval, Sairong Bael, Ria's cousin and the strongest youth, Kiba, Surtur II, the ultimate rook belonging to Searsex and his bodyguard as a youth, and Beowulf, one of Searsex's 2 pawns and one of Naruto's caretakers since he was little, had all accepted their position as his groomsmen. The last spot was up for debate. If he asked Searsex and he accepted, he'd have to put up with his Siscon antics. If he asked Issei, who would obviously accept just to see so many beautiful women wearing revealing dresses. He'd have to deal with trying to keep him from perving out on the wrong person and wind up on the receiving end of a massive beatdown the likes of which have never been seen before. Just as he was about to resign himself to asking Issei, another name popped into his mind, someone he'd been friends with for nearly as long as Ruvel. A flashback. He smiled, took out his phone, and dialed a number. "Hey, B," he said jokingly, "it's been a while, pay attention, I would like to request that you do something for me." You see, to preserve his hearing, he kept the phone away from his ear. "I'm getting married." The voice on the other end of the line said, "It's unbelievable that you're getting married. 9, what's her name and sign?" He said to him, "It's Rias-chan, B, you know, the girl I mentioned to you and Yuki when I was spending time with you and Yugito-chan." He paused to allow B to respond, saying, "Anyway, I wanted to ask you if you'd be my 6th groomsman." "You can? That's fantastic. In order for us to get you a suit, I need you to be here tomorrow morning." He paused once more and said, "Awesome, I should warn you, the wedding is at 8. I'm so excited, I've added a few new friends to my peer group." "B, don't complain to me that I didn't choose you to be a member of my peerage. When your body refused to accept the knights, I attempted to make you my knight and then my rook, but even with both rooks, you were too expensive for me to reincarnate. I couldn't have reincarnated you unless I waited for my own strength to increase, since 2 rooks, worth 10 pawns, wouldn't work. Before I could even think about trying to reincarnate you, it might have taken years or even decades. I can even explain why it didn't work. You were already proficient in senjutsu when I attempted to reincarnate you. Your price alone made it impossible for me to reincarnate you. I might have had to use 5 or more of my pawns just to reincarnate Yugito-chan if she had been proficient in senjutsu at the time." He inhaled deeply and listened to B's words. "Listen, B. I would still consider you a valued comrade and good friend even if I were unable to reincarnate you. Like all the other tailed lords' sons and daughters I've encountered. Indeed, even Gaara, you are aware that his bloodlust is far worse than Shukaku's, since he used to go on rampages through the underworld, murdering any fool who dared to enter their domain in the hopes of becoming famous by defeating the weakest of the tailed lords. He has actually become much more composed. Gaara agreed to be my ally and would take my call if I needed his assistance, but I was also unable to reincarnate him as one of my rooks, if that helps, similar to what you did." Naruto threatened to call Gaara and ask him to be his groomsman if you would continue to complain about not being added to his peerage. "All right," he said, "please arrive by 10 a.m. tomorrow so that we can finish everything and be prepared for the wedding at 8 p.m. tomorrow." End of the flashback. He soon lost all sense of time, and Rias was starting to awaken. Her blue eyes met his, and before he could respond, she planted a passionate kiss on his lips. She moved to straddle his, and as he did, he felt a strange dampness brush against his stomach, and their tongues danced around each other, each soaking up the taste of their partner. When he attempted to move his body on the bed, Naruto felt his arousal rubbing against her butt. Naruto said, "Well, that's certainly a wonderful way to wake up," as he looked up at Rias, who had a mischievous expression in her eyes, after they had separated to breathe again. She whispered, "It's only going to get better once we're married, Naruto-kun," and just as they were about to share another kiss, there was a knock on the door. Both Naruto and Rias sighed. "Yes," Naruto called. From behind the door, Hinata called out, "B-san is here. Master, he said you and your groomsmen were going to go shopping for a suit for him to wear to the wedding." "Give me and Rias a minute and we'll be down there in a moment," Naruto moaned, cursing himself for asking B to arrive so early. She said, "Of course, master," and went back downstairs. "You asked Yuki's son to be your groomsman," she said doubtfully, glancing at Rias. "It was either him, Gaara, your Siscon brother, or Issei, who would have ogled the wrong person and been on the end of a superpowered beatdown the likes of which might scar him for life," Naruto monotoned, making Rias go pale. She would have killed Naruto if he had asked Searsex to be one of his groomsmen, and Issei. Wedding dresses often accentuated one's figure while being conservatively skimpy in some places, so he was only asking for trouble between Gaara and B. She would gladly take B over the former psychopath son of the most insane of the tailed lords. At least you could ignore B's terrible rapping. Gaara's blank stare seemed to follow you around and unnerved many people. "Good point," she said, aware that he had chosen the least awkward option out of the 4. Even though they both wanted to continue their activities that morning, they had to get ready for the wedding, so they shared a gentle kiss and started getting dressed. Of course, Rias asked Naruto to help her put on her white lace bra, and he did, but he also had the opportunity to grope them while kissing her neck, which made her groan and only increased his desire for her. "Naruto-kun," she moaned sensually once more, "we've got to get dressed." "I can't help it sometimes, Riasheim," Naruto said, releasing his tender hold on her full breasts with a heave. before snapping the hook on. Before we were interrupted, I just couldn't get enough of your beautiful voice. I know, Naruto-kun, she said, turning around and putting her hand on his cheek and caressing his whisker-like birthmarks with her thumb. Trust me, we decided to hold off on losing our virginity to each other until our honeymoon, but I still want you as much as you want me. He complained. That doesn't mean I've got to like it, which made her laugh uncontrollably. It's not necessary for you to like it, please put up with it until our honeymoon starts, she said with a warm smile. When Naruto said, just go into the bathroom or we'll never leave the room, she kissed his cheek, changed into her clothes, and locked the bathroom door. It took a few minutes for Rias and Naruto to finish dressing and make their way downstairs, where they were met by Yugito attempting to choke B, who had chosen to begin rapping while Hinata presented him to the peerages. When Naruto yelled, "Hey, B," B momentarily stopped rapping and attempted to give Naruto a fist bump. The tall, dark-skinned, horned man was sent to his knees in agony when Naruto kneed him in the nuts. What was that for, ya fool? B moaned painfully. Why did you hit me with my tool? Naruto yelled, because you were a cock-blocking bastard, taking everyone by surprise aside from Rias, who was grinning because you ruined the moment that was meant to be perfect. You bastard, Issei said, summoning his boosted gear, ready to dish out his own beating on the muscular B. How could you do something like cock-blocking Naruto-senpai? It's a sin that cannot be forgiven. Akeno smirked sensuously and said, Era, so it looks like our Issei has some morals after all. I may be an opai-obsessed hentai, but the bro code is clear, Issei said, his eyes blazing with passion as he turned to face Akeno. For no reason does a bro cock-block another bro. Unexpectedly, Kiba acknowledged with a nod. In addition, Naruto-senpai is my devil role model. Someone who can assemble a harem of incredible beauties who will even share him with other women because they adore him for who he is. I've wanted that since I got my first chubby, and seeing someone who can make it happen gives me hope that I'll be able to have my own harem someday. Everyone gave him a blank stare. No wonder why you asked me to be your groomsman if he was one of the candidates, B remarked as he unexpectedly recovered from the blow. Issei yelled, Naruto-senpai, I could have been your groomsman, why didn't you ask me? It was either you, Searsex, my friend Gaara, or B. Because I didn't want you to ogle the wrong woman's breasts and end up getting the crap beat out of you by every woman in the room, Naruto said. If I had asked her brother to be my groomsman, Rias would have killed me. Many women would have chastised me and killed you. If I had asked Gaara makes those around him uneasy. B, on the other hand, is the worst rapper in the underworld. He was too expensive for me to reincarnate, but I nearly made him my knight or my rook. Thank the Mao, Yugito exclaimed with relief. Gaara would have been my rook, but he cost too much too, Naruto stated, but we're still good friends and they said they would help me out if I ever gave them a call. Issei said, so what kind of devil is B? Which made B chuckle. B is not a devil. He's a yokai, Naruto declared, adding that B is the son of Gyuki, the seven-tailed Ushioni, one of the nine-tailed lords, just like Kunoheim and Yugito-chan. So how strong is he if you couldn't reincarnate him as your knight or rook? Issei asked shakily, his eyes widening and his skin turning pale. Naruto told them, well, I think the only reason I couldn't reincarnate him is that he's actually one of the few children of the nine-tailed lords who has mastered senjutsu. If it weren't for that, I might have been able to get away with reincarnating him with just one rook. I probably would have used 5 or more pawns to reincarnate Yugito-chan instead of the one I used if she had mastered senjutsu. When a yokai masters senjutsu, their natural abilities are greatly enhanced, making them much more valuable to reincarnate. Senjutsu is an incredibly powerful skill, Rias continued. Because of this, only extremely strong high-class devils even look for yokai who are either already proficient in senjutsu or have the ability to learn it. Any yokai who becomes a member of his peerage will be able to learn and eventually master senjutsu because of his power. With the aid of senjutsu and Naruto-kun's power, Yugito-chan defeated Yubaluna, the queen of the risers, and stopped her from sensing the hatred that had accumulated throughout the world. Wow, Issei exclaimed. All right, B-senpai is your groomsman and incredibly powerful Naruto-senpai, I can still be your best man. Actually, my good friend Ruval Phoenix is my best man, Naruto laughed sheepishly. Kiba, Ria's cousin, Siren, Beowulf Nisan, and Surtur Second Nisan are also my groomsmen. You invited Beowulf-sama and Surtur Second Sama as your groomsmen, Rias and Akeno asked at the same time, their eyes widening. Of course, Naruto grinned and nodded. Aside from Kiba, I don't know many guys who would be willing to be my groomsmen, so I ended up talking to Beowulf Nisan first and he agreed almost immediately. Subsequently, I contacted Surtur Second Nisan, who expressed his honor to serve as my groomsman. You always did have those two wrapped around your little fingers when we were kids, Naruto-kun, Rias said, shaking her head with a faint, nostalgic smile. Who are they? Asia inquired of Rias. Surtur Second Sama is Oni-sama's rook and known as the ultimate rook, she replied. Beowulf-sama is one of Oni-sama's pawns and used to take care of Naruto-kun and me when we were little. When Grafia-ne-sama took us to the park, he was Naruto-kun's bodyguard. Naruto-kun used to be able to ask them for anything, and they would give in and get it for him because they loved spending time with him. Everyone just stared at Naruto, who was whistling a harmless song, who knew that Naruto could influence influential people at such a young age. Anyway, shouldn't we be going to get our tuxedos? Naruto inquired. Issei said, but what about Beowulf-sama or Surtur Second Sama? But Naruto simply waved him away. Naruto said, they were there when Oji-sama married Grafia-ne-sama. Unless they have grown larger since then, which I doubt they have, they won't require a new tuxedo. Beowulf-ne-san is merely a wall of muscles that has been given human form, while Surtur Second-ne-san is a giant. While Rias and the girls met up with Grafia and Lady Gremory to go to the bridal boutique, where Rias would have her last alterations made and the bridesmaids would get to have their own dresses altered, Naruto took the guys to the tux shop with a final kiss. Is everything alright, Naruto-senpai? Issei said. You don't look so good. Naruto was putting on his tux while his friends were being measured for their own. The pervert was correct, B realized as he turned to face his friend. Naruto's hands were trembling noticeably, and perspiration was starting to appear on his brow. What's got you worried, bro? You know, this is your dream. This whole thing just feels so surreal, guys, Naruto said, swallowing the lump in his throat and laughing dryly. I mean, I fought Riser Phoenix, a nearly matchless opponent with multiple rating games under his belt, just for the chance to marry Riasheim, and now I'm excited and terrified at the same time at the thought of marrying the woman I love. Naruto said, what if she's changing her mind? Naruto-senpai, Kiba called. Rias Bucko has never looked happier than the day you defeated Riser to win her hand in marriage. She's been smiling more than I think I've ever seen her in the past week. Even her rivalry with Karen-san has evolved into a developing friendship. I must admit that in my experience with Rias Bucko, you are most likely the best thing that has ever happened to her. Yeah, Issei agreed, supporting Kiba. Normally, she gets upset with me for not getting a contract signed, but when I returned from one without one, she just grinned and said that I did my best and that I'll get a signature soon. Unlike her usual behavior, she didn't even reprimand me. I only have two things to say about that, Issei, Naruto said calmly, letting out a sigh. The first is that you aren't really satisfying their desires, which is why you don't get any signatures. You simply wind up spending time with them. Second, you won't be able to grow stronger if no contracts are signed. By not becoming stronger, you won't be able to train to become even stronger like my peerage. By doing this, you are essentially saying that Rias wasted all 8 of her pawns on a weakling who was lucky enough to carry with him a Longinus tier sacred gear when she could have used them on far more worthy candidates. I may not be your king, but I won't let you damage Rias' reputation in that way. You're right, Issei groaned as he curled up in a corner with a cloud of rain over his head. But sometimes I can't help it. I am superior to a devil as a human. Kiba said, actually, even as a human, you're pretty horrible. Meaning in front of women who would never think twice about beating you 3 into a bloody pulp. You hang out with those 2 delinquent perverts and talk freely about breasts, raping women with your mind, and being a harem king. Those aren't exactly admirable traits for a person to possess. Issei yelled angrily, you understand what I mean, pretty boy? I'm only very good at making friends. What kinds of desires can a guy like me satisfy, anyway? Despite being a huge pervert, Kiba remembered, didn't you and Asia go on that one contract to give dating advice to a client? You actually have a way of giving decent romantic advice to people. That might be your specialty, offering guidance on how to win someone over or even just being friends with someone, as such contracts do occasionally arise, though they are extremely uncommon. Naruto's response, exactly, which is why he shouldn't rely on getting them and actually focus on getting contracts signed, made Issei even more depressed. He sobbed helplessly, you sound just like Rias Bucko when you say stuff like that, and B simply shook his head in dismay. You should stop thinking with your tool, ya fool, B sang, stuff like that just ain't cool. Issei sobbed, you guys are so cruel, as his depression deepened. In the interim, Karen and Akeno were behind her, both grinning, though Karen's eyes were watering, as Rias and the others showed off their dresses to each other while the last adjustments were being made. The succubus remarked, that dress fits you perfectly, and you look so beautiful. Thanks, Karen, Rias replied, that means a lot coming from you. Akeno put a hand on Rias' shoulder and said, I'm so glad to see you two getting along. Rias Bucko, but she could feel her best friend's body trembling violently. "What's wrong? You've always wanted this, right?" "Of course, but I can't help but feel nervous," she said, nodding, "because we're finally going to open up to each other about our virginities as more than just friends. We're getting married and beginning a new life together. It's a brand new journey." Karen said, "But you're still worried about something," which made Rias nod once more. "What if I can't satisfy him when we finally give each other our virginities? What if he's having second thoughts about marrying me?" she questioned. Karen yelled, "Rias, Naruto-kun isn't that kind of person. He would never reconsider getting married to you because he truly loves you. Besides, I'm sure he's just as worried about being able to satisfy you," she said, laughing, her breasts bouncing a little. "It's even more special because it's your first time with someone you love instead of just a casual fling. Actually, the other girls in Naruto-kun's harem of a peerage, including myself, are very envious of you." "I must admit that I agree with Karen-chan," Akeno said, turning to face Karen with a seductive smirk. "And the way you got Riser to scream was orgasmic." "Karen-chan," Akeno said, "watching the way Naruto-kun held nothing back as he fought for your heart and the way he absolutely destroyed Riser got me hot under the collar. I only wish I could have done the same." Karen grinned and said, "He deserved no less for attempting to take Rias away from Naruto-kun. It was truly amazing to hear his screams." "Oh, Karen-chan, I completely agree with you," Akeno remarked, "but I doubt I'll ever get the chance to do that to Riser. However, I'd like to hear your scream." "Maybe I could hear you scream also, Akeno-chan," Karen said, glancing at Akeno through half-lidded eyes while maintaining her smirk. The idea made Rias Queen blush. Rias yelled, "Will you two stop flirting with each other? I'm having a personal crisis." "You worry too much, Rias," Karen declared with assurance. "You should do what Naruto does." She practically demanded, "Karen, what does Naruto-kun do?" "He follows his instincts," she said. "Now, what is your heart telling you to do?" Before opening her eyes again, Rias closed them and listened to her heart. "I'm going to marry Naruto-kun and I'll do my best to make him happy." "I'm happy to hear that, but you do realize that you will have to speak with the rest of Naruto-kun's peerage, right?" Karen said with a sincere smile to Rias. "Although we have complete faith in you to ensure Naruto-kun's happiness, you cannot bring back the Uzumaki clan by yourself," Rias said, turning to face her with a questioning expression. "You've probably come to that realization by now. Many of the girls in his peerage, including myself, genuinely love him because of his boundless capacity for love. After our initial conversation, we decided to share him if one of us got married to him. Although I acknowledge that when we came up with this plan, we should have anticipated that he would ask you to marry him. We never anticipated that you would find yourself in the predicament you were in or that he would propose to you." "I understand, Karen," Rias said, nodding. "I wanted to think that she could help bring back the Uzumaki clan with Naruto because she knew that other people would fall in love with him just as she had. After all, I would most likely be married to Riser rather than Naruto-kun if it weren't for you after our honeymoon. I'm sure I'll talk to you and the others about it, and I'll definitely talk to Naruto-kun about it too." "I appreciate it." Later on in the afternoon, the wedding took place behind the Uzumaki clan estate, and hundreds of devils, both young and old, were seated in their seats, while Naruto stood at the altar wearing his tuxedo, his hands twitching nervously as time passed. Seer's ex Lucifer, who had chosen to be the one to formally marry Rias and Naruto because he hadn't been selected as one of Naruto's groomsmen, threw a fit when he saw two members of his peerage as Naruto's groomsman. Surtur II was the biggest person in the area, if not the underworld, and his tuxedo reminded him of his wedding with Graphia, and his every move seemed to strain the fabric of his tuxedo, threatening to tear it apart at a moment's notice. "It's nice to see you and Rias are finally getting married, Naruto Dono," said Surtur II with a grin. "I always knew that the two of you would be together for the rest of your lives." "It means a lot to hear that coming from you, Surtur II Ni-san," Naruto said, grinning at the giant. "But I'm just so nervous and anxious," he said. "I never imagined that this day would arrive so quickly." "It's completely normal, Naruto-chan," Beowulf barked. "I remember when Seer's ex and Graphia got married," the man remarked when Graphia eventually arrived. "Seer's ex was so anxious that he nearly fled the building. He would have been one of those eternal bachelors until Graphia killed him for abandoning her at the altar if she hadn't blocked off any potential escape routes." Naruto laughed aridly because he thought he might do the same with the increasing tension he sensed. At last, the organ began to play, and Rias entered the back door with Lord Gremory at her side. At that moment, Naruto's heart stopped beating. Rias was dressed in a white gown with multiple layers that seemed to accentuate her natural bust line, a white ribbon wrapped around her waist, a white veil barely concealing her face, and crimson hair flowing down her back by the time she was halfway down the red carpet. Naruto realized that this was what he had been waiting his entire life for. She kissed her father on the cheek as she arrived at Naruto's side, and Lord Gremory turned to Naruto and said, "Take care of my little girl," making it clear to everyone else that he wasn't going to flee. Naruto firmly stated, "I will, Lord Gremory. It's a promise of a lifetime." Naruto-kun, don't refer to me as Lord Gremory, you have earned the right to refer to me as Dad. When Naruto said, "Of course, Dad," Lord Gremory nodded and moved to sit next to his wife. He could see that Rias's cheeks were flushed, and he couldn't blame her because he was blushing too when Sirzex started talking. Naruto and Rias had completely ignored him and instead continued to focus on each other. "If there is anyone who thinks these two devils should be together, speak now or forever hold your peace," Sirzex said. With an angry expression on his face, one devil rose up and said, "I object." Issei and Sakura ran over, activated their sacred gears, boosted gear and twice critical respectively, and simultaneously punched the devil in the face. Overruled, they shouted as the devil flew away into the distance before disappearing in the horizon. As everyone else started to perspire, Sirzex said, "Now that that's over, does anyone else object? Good. I now declare you to be husband and wife in the person of Sirzex Lucifer, one of the great Mao and Satan Red. Now you can give the bride a kiss." With a gentle touch, Naruto touched Ria's cheek and said, "I love you, Rias Gremory Uzumaki. And I love you, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." The devils all cheered for the happy couple as their lips met, but neither of them was prepared for what lay ahead. Their honeymoon would start tomorrow.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.